One morning, the young servant who was bringing water for washing suddenly disappeared. The next day, another servant disappeared while going to the market for groceries. Then the coachman who had driven the Duke was gone, and the horse returned completely alone. And even the chief secretary disappeared, leaving behind only his clothes. This time the gentleman asked suspiciously if this had really happened again today. True, the young nobleman's tutor vanished on the spot, and all that remained of him was a rag on the ground. The man grabbed his head, not understanding what was going on here. After all, no matter how many investigations were conducted, they never came to any conclusion. Time flowed on as usual in the Illiston mansion, until one day, the Duke noticed how a small dry tree next to the entrance to the mansion had, unnoticed by anyone, grown over the fence. He immediately asked Linon if he knew the name of this tree, but the servant apologized and admitted that he did not have such knowledge. It might be better to ask the gardener, but the gentleman refused. If he doesn't even know the name of the plant, then it's not particularly important. In any case, this tree looks terrible, so let him tell the gardener to cut it down tomorrow morning. The next day, a servant burst into the master's office screaming, reporting that advisor Linon and the gardener were missing. It happened again, and like everyone else, all that was left was their clothes. What is this? People in the estate were disappearing one after another. The Duke lost all his comrades, and he simply could not contain his grief. Looking out the window, it was hard to lose those who blindly trusted and followed him closely. Suddenly, his throat was constricted by fear from what he saw, and he only let out a quiet, sharp breath. After all, right outside his window, dozens of long branches, dry and hard as crackers, were piled up. Looking at all this horror, he wanted to hide. Was this tree ever this color before, and now it has become so huge? That night, he simply couldn't sleep. So many people died, he wanted to know the real reason. Taking a servant and a lantern with him, he headed into the garden. Suddenly, they both noticed some sharp movement to the side. The man screamed, asking the forest who was hiding there. It is unlikely that he would like the answer. After all, a second later, someone's hand emerged from the crimson roots of the tree. The tree swallows people, not believing his eyes. The man staggered and fell to the ground. After all this, the main gates of the mansion were sealed, but people continued to disappear. But they never managed to get rid of the tree itself. This story began 300 years ago, and it only grew stronger. After some time, leisurely footsteps were heard near the gates of the estate, and she finally found what she was looking for. The coal-haired girl saw a scarlet tree right in front of her, blocking the main gate of the Illiston mansion. It really does exist. It's just amazing. I wonder if she'll be able to get inside. If the tree had been cut down immediately, her appearance would have been much more dramatic. Instead, she decided to start using magic. She put her hand to the cold metal, and her red eyes lit up with flames. Fully focused on her mission, the girl ordered the door to be opened for her. And exactly a second later, the gates opened under a wave of magic. Only dust flew in cubes in different directions. The cursed Illiston mansion, whose gates have been closed for 300 years. The girl couldn't believe it. She really was the one who entered here first. A feeling of self-admiration appeared in her head. She had amazing powers, didn't she? Suddenly, she heard an unfamiliar voice order her to stand still. Apparently, they were worried servants. They did not understand how such a young lady could pass through the main gate. He ordered the maid to urgently inform the owner about this. And then the main news spread throughout the estate. The young lady was able to pass through the main gate. Less than half an hour had passed before they met over a cup of hot tea. The girl did not touch the drink and waited for the dialogue to begin. The servant reported that their workers actually saw her pass by the scarlet tree. They needed to hear what she had to say. Leighton's, or Illiston, otherwise known as the Archduke, was calm. How could they take seriously the words of a child they didn't even know? His elongated heavenly eyes stared piercingly into the soul, studying the guest's behavior. She overcame the mansion's first curse, the scarlet tree that feeds on people, without a single scratch. The idea that a child could do something like that seemed simply unbelievable to him. It was beyond his comprehension. And what does this brunette say? Her name is Simone, but she doesn't have a last name, because she doesn't come from a noble family. Placing the cup of tea on the table, the Archduke repeated once again that she had passed through the sealed gates. In that case, he is interested not only in how, but rather why she came here. The girl immediately and boldly confessed to his lordship that she simply wanted to offer him a deal. The servant became angry. How dare a commoner ask for a deal with his master? The girl suddenly stood up from her seat and was about to leave, since they didn't believe her. However, then she suddenly turned around and, with glowing red eyes, declared that the gentleman was cursed. And she was telling the truth. He didn't have much time left to live. After all, the skinned creature is hanging right now behind his back and grinning madly. It seems like it has been haunting him for a long time and doesn't seem to be going away. The worker kept trying to defend the honor of his master. But what kind of nonsense is she talking about? However, the girl had already asked permission to take her leave and was about to leave. Just at the door, as she was about to grab the handle, the Archduke stopped her, saying that he would like to know more about it. The brunette smirked. She knew it. He was too curious and wouldn't tolerate such a statement. The deal is very simple. She will break absolutely all curses, and in return, she will not ask for much. Let him just allow her to live in this mansion. It's not a difficult condition for him at all. Now the master was surprised in exactly the same way as his servant. In exchange for the removal of the curses, the girl only asked for support until she came of age. And this was the only condition of Simone, a 17-year-old necromancer. Well, in reality, the girl's name was Seo Hyun-jung. She was a 25-year-old office worker. The thing is, one day she woke up in the body of the heroine of the most popular webtoon. I awakened a hidden power when I woke up. The girl is able to see ghosts, but even as a child, other children began to bully her because of the color of her blood-red eyes. They threw piles of stones at her, asking why her parents had abandoned their daughter and run away. The poor girl tried to escape their attacks, and, while running away in desperation, she crashed into someone. It turned out to be the headmistress, a grown woman with a stern look and a tightly slicked back bun. Narrowing her eyes, she ordered Simone to follow her. The lady said just one phrase about someone wanting to meet her. After some time, they met at the appointed place with a man in a black robe. The headmistress introduced her as the one she had already spoken about a lot before, and she happily declared that she was unique. They would not find another like her. Taking a strand of her long hair, she drew the interlocutor's attention to the fact that since ancient times, black hair and red eyes were considered special, something like a deal with the god of death. Well, couldn't this child be useful for research in their society? The girl tensed up when she heard the hoarse, enthusiastic answer. The hooded man thought she was excellent, and their occult community would gladly accept this necromancer. After some time in a secret occult research society, a group of people walked slowly through this place. It is really creepy. Dead people on the ground, holding strange figures and leaves with spells in their hands until the very end. Suddenly, they discovered an exhausted girl chained to the wall. The man immediately screamed in surprise. It seemed she could still be saved, because these occultists had not yet managed to sacrifice her. She was still alive. This is how Simone, who was one step away from death, was saved and went on a journey with the main characters. This is where the story ends. But the real end for Simone, who traveled with the hero, was a baby born with a gift. Destined to become the most powerful necromancer, she suffered oppression all her life due to the bad treatment in the world, and experienced such torment. And she was saved by the main character. But in the end, she voluntarily sacrificed her life for the sake of her comrades who saved her. Waking up from a nightmare at night, the girl, in tears, did not understand why, of all people, she had entered Simone's body. Suddenly, a huge hand rested on the blanket she was covering herself with. It was a terrible monster, hardly resembling a human being. It screamed at her to fall, to rise, and then to fall again. Echoes of the words of death were repeated in her head. Thanks to the fact that this horror was always hanging around her, she had already gotten used to ghosts. So she decided that before she was given to the occult society, according to the plot, she had to escape from this orphanage. Phew! So what should she do? She can't hide the fact that she's a necromancer, and running away without a plan is a stupid and dangerous undertaking. And even if she were to run away, where could she go? Why didn't she awaken in the body of a rich noblewoman? Is coming home late from work and reading a couple of stories with a beer really such a big crime? While the girl, in despair and hatred, beat the air with her hands, she caught herself thinking, exactly, noble society. Yes, great. We can try it that way. It's the most important episode of the first season. Archduke Illiston kidnaps Simone to remove countless curses without warning Abel, and, breaking down, He screamed at the top of his voice that only a necromancer could remove these curses. The girl, bound hand and foot, for some reason said that she did not have enough strength for this, and then she apologized without ever awakening to her full abilities. Since even the Imperial Necromancer is unable to remove all the curses, the Archduke has no way out. He has completely despaired. This man in the original story played the role of a typical villain, but he was also a person who cared about his family. What if he helps her too? The girl manipulated him because he could easily take advantage of her abilities and then immediately drive her away. Therefore, she will remove the curses only gradually and will finish exactly when she comes of age. This is not gratuitous help. And she will also get hers, a large room and meals according to noble standards. If she wants, she is ready to sign a contract. Well, if something doesn't suit him during the process, they can finish at any time. While she was saying that they could just separate peacefully, the girl silently prayed that he would agree. While waiting for his decision, she repeated the request in her head 100 times, and then she turned around abruptly and promised that she was ready to put her life on the line. After all, this was her only chance to convince a man to take her. A moment later, he gestured with his hand to Keller to bring something. He returned with a huge book in his hands and an amethyst in the middle of the cover. It was a manual passed down through the family from one generation to the next. He heard that even necromancers have their own division ranks. So before hiring her, the guy wanted to make sure of her capabilities. He chose to start with something simple, and the girl began to leaf through the manual. Firstly, entry through the main gate is prohibited. You cannot approach it. It is better to use the bypass. The girl asked what would happen if all this was not observed, if she repeated the way she entered the territory today. The Archduke came closer and said with a cold look that if she fell through even a little, she would die. Simone became slightly withdrawn, but then pulled herself together and confidently declared that she was ready to accept his challenge. Night had fallen. The crescent moon gently illuminated the earth and all living things. The girl quietly followed the maid along the long corridor. Even before this, she asked his lordship a couple of questions regarding the destruction of the tree in front of the entrance. Firstly, the curse will be lifted in exactly 1 week. Secondly, everyone in this house, including himself, needs to go to bed early until all of this is over. And finally, she needed someone with no connection to the Illiston family or this house, someone skilled with a sword. Why do they need a swordsman to remove the curse? They need a skilled craftsman to cut down the tree. She could, of course, do it herself, but the curse cannot be lifted alone. The man believed that there was no need for strangers. He could also help. But Simone replied that the curse was placed on the houses, so that no one from the family could lift it. Moreover, from today on, his lordship needs to go to bed early. After all, if her predictions are true, then this tree secretly comes to life. When all the damned fall asleep, and when he comes back to life, he takes all those who are not sleeping. The tree was hunting people. The Archduke considered this completely absurd. It was discovered 300 years ago by the first owner of the house, and no one has approached it since then. At that time, she only didn't understand one thing: how he managed to continue living. This is exactly what they are about to find out. But for now, she was calmly settling in. Following the maid for a couple of minutes, they arrived at the place a couple of minutes later. These chambers now belong to Lady Simone. The maid opened the doors, and the girl gasped in surprise at why everything was so sparkling with cleanliness. Entering inside, she looked around. Yes, this room was bigger than her 2 apartments. It looks more like a house than an apartment, and the furniture looks like it's covered in gold. She certainly asked for care, but she didn't expect this at all. The Archduke allowed Lady Simone to move around the mansion, but they have rules, and the lady hoped that no one would violate them. For example, it is forbidden to go up to the 3rd floor without permission. It's clear from her angry expression that she's unhappy that such a girl has settled here, in the place she cleaned so carefully. Well, what can she do, whether she likes it or not? But now she lives here, which means noble life begins tomorrow. Sprawled out on the bed, she told the maid that she was going to take a nap and gave her permission to go. What a sour expression she had. She openly showed her displeasure. The noble atmosphere increased. Having swallowed the awkward situation, the lady nodded and said that she would send her a maid tomorrow. After wishing her a good rest, the girl was finally left alone. The next day, the estate grounds looked quite sunny from the window. as if there was no tree devouring everyone there. The new maid arrived early and greeted them with a trembling voice, saying that her name was Anna, and she will serve her, oh God. The poor girl, she is shaking from the sugar. The girl replied that she was pleased to meet him and offered to give him a tour of the mansion. The worker really turned out to be a good person who does her job well. Although she was nervous at first, she later showed everything well. The estate's territory turned out to be huge, and there were so many plants. How many people worked here for the good every day? And what a friendly atmosphere was in the air. Everyone was laughing and helping each other. But everyone outside the mansion thinks that it is hard for them to live here because of the gloomy atmosphere. Of course, they have strict rules here, and ghosts often appear. But over this time, they have gotten used to it and become stronger. Red Eyes glanced around quickly, and an observant glance caught the maid. It seems they really have become stronger, since they can carry such heavy weights. The maid apologized for talking nonsense, thinking she had said too much. But everything is fine. Thanks to her, the girl was able to soak up the atmosphere of the mansion. She decided to serve dinner right in her chambers, as an apology. Just a couple of minutes later, when they returned to the room, Simone found a beautifully laid table waiting for him. As she requested, they prepared the same food for her as for the owner, although it was unknown whether she would like it. The way she ate before could never compare to this. Thin porridge with moldy bread and sprouted potatoes. She didn't expect anything less from the ducal house, and Anna had done a good job today. The girl said that she would not rush to eat, so she could be free. The maid was shocked. But how could this be? She had to clean up after her. But Simone, taking the knife in her hands, declared that the time had come, the hour when all the inhabitants of the estate must go to bed. Had she forgotten about this, seeing a sharp object in the hands of a lady who already frightened her, the girl quickly changed her mind, and she began to bow almost to the floor, offering her apologies. And then she quickly said goodnight and left. Great, we can enjoy the feast in peace. However, the night was not as safe in this place as it seemed. The fire in the candles was already flickering slightly. It was as if someone's presence was moving him with its breath. The huge burgundy slimy with blood roots of the tree woke up. They immediately began making slurping sounds. But the lady did not notice this. She was carried away by her meal. Oh, what a juicy steak, so delicious that she's about to cry. Suddenly, a long creaking sound was heard from behind the doors. Simone didn't immediately understand where the sound was coming from, as if a baby was trying to pull the door handle. Instead of being scared, she just glared menacingly at the door that had interrupted her steak eating and ordered him to come in. There were many strange sounds coming from behind that door, but no one wanted to, or simply could not, pull the handle. The monster, who had long since transformed into the Archduke, asked in a drawn-out voice to open the door for him, and assured him that it was Illiston. However, the voice begging to be let in did not sound like a man at all. And then the girl realized that the time had come. She walked up to the door as if nothing had happened, and asked in a calm voice what had brought him here at such a late hour. A dark voice was heard from the other side. He needed to tell her something. The monster continued to demand that the door be opened for him and pulled the handle. But the girl remained calm and replied that, unfortunately, she couldn't. And when the monster started twitching even harder, meticulously asking why, she used her magical ability to look through the wall, and she saw two huge eyes there, which came close to the door. The girl jumped back. What a horror! And the handle continued to twitch without stopping. No way! This is not the time to be afraid. We need to think of something right now. After all, when she initially came to this house, she knew that she would become the first prey, so she wouldn't be scared. And she certainly won't be defeated by that monster, who pretends to be an archduke. She understood that the creature would not leave her alone, and she realized that she really wanted to sleep now. That's why she can't open the door for him. Let him come exactly a week later, and she will gladly let him in. Hearing the guarantee of prey, the monster was very surprised. Could it really be true? He hoped that the girl wasn't deceiving him and would really open the door. Simone waited a long time for him to leave. It was already late at night outside, and then she decided to check if the monster had left. She wanted to open the door slightly, when suddenly something abruptly crashed into the wooden handles and began to shake. She just smiled nervously as he frightened her with his roar. It seems that now this monster tree will definitely go away, and we can go to bed peacefully. Early in the morning, unsuspecting birds flew over its branches. The maid shook Simone's blanket anxiously. It was already morning. The girl stood up slowly, rubbing her eyes. It looked like she hadn't slept enough. But no. Of course she thought that after the night's incident, she would not be able to sleep, or would be rumpled the next day. However, she slept like a log. This bed was like something out of a fantasy novel, simply superb. The maid was glad to hear it. The door handle is broken, but what happened last night is nothing special. It was just that a tree was breaking into her chambers, and she promised to let him in a week. Wow, this tree blocked the entrance to the mansion for 300 years. How did she manage to do it? The maid was already starting to worry. She thought her mistress was an ordinary good girl, but in fact, she possesses the power of death. Is she really a necromancer? Until his lordship calls her to him, she has the right to do whatever she wants. The girl was worried again, and shaking with fear, she said that the food would be served exactly the same as yesterday. While she's having dinner, the maid promises to ask everyone about their sleep patterns that night. Simone suddenly stopped this sweet girl, who again thought that something was required of her, but the lady decided to just thank her from the heart. Even if it was her job, she really was a good person. Rays of warmth from the sun slowly filtered into the room through the curtains. There was a calendar on the desk with days marked with crosses. The Archduke was informed that 3 days had already passed, and Simone was still sitting in his chambers. As Anna says, she never skips meals. Apart from this, she didn't ask for anything and never left the room. Having coughed, the servant turned to the master, asking for forgiveness in advance. This is not impudence, but does this child have the strength to break such a curse? He was worried that the stranger could only cause him unnecessary problems, and he still didn't trust her. In the future, they will understand if her words are true, and what if it is too late. The man just stood up from the table, asking not to worry about it. After all, it didn't matter to him at all what the result was. He was ready to wait a little longer. It is clear that in this case, it would be better to increase surveillance of her even more, just in case. Time passed, and the 6th day arrived. The girl, dressed in a clean, neat dress, finally left the chambers. The Archduke immediately noticed how good she looked. All thanks to him, of course. Suddenly, he noticed that her hair and eyes seemed to have become different. Well, yes, she used magic paint. It's just somehow awkward to reveal to everyone that she's a necromancer. She used the one he left. It's not a big deal. In general, he wanted to talk about the fact that she doesn't leave the room. He's interested in what she was doing there all the time. Taking a sip of tea, she replied that he shouldn't worry. The curse would be lifted, as they had agreed. Then the girl asked if they had done what she had asked them to do. The man closed his eyes in irritation, as if he had not achieved what he wanted from the conversation. And then he asked Kelra to come here and bring the one she wanted. A man with a sword, in a brown robe, opened the doors himself. And attracting attention, Simone slowly approached closer. Hearing his voice during the greeting, the girl turned pale. Taking off his hood, the incredibly handsome guy admitted that it was an honor for him. She had seen this handsome, blue-eyed blonde somewhere before. His name was Ren, and he was one of the members of that very same Travelers Guild. After the boy was introduced to the owner of the estate, there was silence in the room. He looked intently at the girl, as if studying her. In response, she looked at him in exactly the same way, feelings and emotions flaring up like a flame. This is exactly the man she will never be able to forget his face, one who hides his origins and wanders in search of lifting the curse of the royal family. One of the main characters in this story was Abel's companion, also known as Crown Prince Louis Dingbian. For some reason, he was imprinted in her memory as a tall blonde man riding a horse, a hero ready to save everyone around him. According to history, he should have met Abel around this time, so what is he doing here? He says he was busy. He was carrying out some order. Simone, without wasting any time, introduced herself and said that she would be working with him. The Archduke said that he would learn the details of the cooperation from the girl, but that he should not rush. The first thing he should do is go and talk to Kelram. He will take him and show him his new room. Closing the doors behind them, they left behind a mysterious trail. Meanwhile, information about the sleep patterns of the mansion's residents had already been collected for Simone, and she could familiarize herself with it. Taking the sheet of document in her hands, the girl began to read. Köhler and the Archduke were the last to go to bed. Well, the rest go to bed early, as it should be. Suddenly, the man opposite interrupted her from reading and asked if she really would get rid of the tree by tomorrow morning. Of course, yes, everything is almost ready, she finished. Once the swordsman has done his work, the tree will be gone by tomorrow morning. But he was still interested in what if it didn't work out. Well, of course, such an outcome is also possible. In that case, both she and the swordsman will be trapped. And then they will be eaten by this tree, and the deaths in the mansion will continue. It seems the Archduke was not very pleased with this version. But what surprised him most was that such a young girl spoke so simply about death. He waved it off and changed his mind about continuing the conversation on such topics. It doesn't matter, she can be free. Time passed faster, and now the sky was becoming colorfully painted, which reminded us of the imminent arrival of night. After a strange conversation with the owner of the estate, the girl returned to the room. However, even there she was unable to be alone with her thoughts. This guy was waiting for her, lounging on a chair. He thought she would be late, so he didn't wait and settled in beforehand, hoping that she wouldn't be offended. But no, she was terribly angry. He just continued to joke, judging by the importance of the employer. He should stand up and bow with respect. Now she seems to have remembered. This is exactly Louise's true character. Okay, let her sit down already. Before she explains the plan, we need to clarify something. The girl's expression changed, and she sternly asked Ren if he understood anything. For example, how dangerous all this could be, and why he agreed to the job anyway. Well, of course, he wouldn't have entered the cursed mansion without special preparation, and he wouldn't have come if he hadn't found out everything. God, he's a lot more boring than the original, but he makes up for it with his excellent skills. The only thing that worries her is that their meeting happened much earlier than in the original. Well, let them. As soon as they finish with the curse, they will disperse, and everything will be fine again. Then now she can start telling him what to do. In case a tree eats her tonight, he will need to cut it as quickly as possible, using all his strength. Having cleared her head, she remarked, "Let him agree. It's not that difficult." The guy's blue eyes seemed about to fall out of his eyes in surprise. He couldn't believe it. He jumped up from his seat, wondering if she would really just let the tree eat her. And then he will need to cut it down and defeat it himself. She agreed with even greater joy. How good. And he grasps it well. That is, she is ready to say goodbye to her life in order to remove the curse. No? Did she talk about that? Let him listen more carefully and just do what he asks. She heard that he had the most honed skills, right? Cutting down a tree shouldn't be a difficult task for him. It's not that difficult. But there is one problem. She may not realize it if she doesn't own a sword. However, if he cuts the tree with all his strength, the one who was swallowed will also be cut into pieces, so there might be the slightest chance that she might get hurt. In that case, he doesn't even intend to take on this matter. Damn, she's in trouble. If they don't come to an agreement now, this could become a huge problem. It's already getting dark. Of course, the noble crown prince is not ready to tolerate the suffering of his own people. But she is threatened with death, not only because of the tree, but also because of the occult society, the Archduke, and their company of heroes. The boy sat there and simply couldn't understand what Illiston was thinking when he gave such a weak girl the task of breaking the curse alone. Everything that was happening was not at all in her plans, either the way she wanted it or not at all. Or maybe, as rumors say, he just wants to make a sacrifice to black magic. If so, then it's terrible. The guy decided to join her because he couldn't leave the client alone. But if something went wrong, he would stop. Great, they managed to convince him. Then they will make sure that he knows that she values her life. And he believes that the girl, in turn, carefully prepared for all of this. Getting up from the table, he thought about what to tell her. And I decided to just wish you good luck, and see you soon at sunset. After all, it is at this moment that the ill-fated tree will emerge from its hibernation. The night raven, sitting on a tree branch, uttered its last ominous croak, and then he quickly flew away, losing short black feathers in the air. Lady Simone had been warned in advance, and was quietly reading a book when Sir Ren arrived. Having thanked Anna, she sent her to bed, and they needed to close the door from the inside. The guy was already dressed in everything necessary for the fight. Slamming the door, he locked it and said, "This is the night they have been waiting for." And now, turning to the lady, he waited for clear instructions. She continued reading the book just as calmly, turning pages after pages. "Let it just wait here, it will come soon." Taking off his hood, he came closer and began asking what kind of tree it was. Sitting down opposite, The guy did not understand how the tree could move at all and pose a threat. It looked more like a stupid joke. If he doesn't understand, then let him just wait, because all he needs to do is do the work of a swordsman. Also, from now on it is better to speak in a whisper. It became dark in the ladies' chambers. Night fell. The impatient man tapped his finger on the table, and in the end, unable to bear it, he wondered how much longer he would have to sit here like this. However, I decided not to bother this girl. She already seemed worried. She stood by the window and waited attentively. She was 17. Well, at least they were the same age. As soon as the blonde wanted to ask her something, they were interrupted by a sharp, loud knock on the door. Making a silent sign with her finger, Simone announced that it was here. The guy was shocked. How could a tree, your mother, come here on its own? Jumping up, he didn't understand what kind of nonsense was going on. He was even more shocked when he noticed that the shape of the tree has changed, as if some part of it is missing. Meanwhile, the knocking on the door became louder and more frequent. The blonde quickly ran up to them and, taking out his sword, ordered the lady to hide behind it. But the girl pushed him away. She had already explained the plan. She didn't need security. The guy grabbed her wrist, thinking she was just showing off. But of course, she is completely serious about this and wouldn't joke in such a situation. Okay, so be it. There was little time left, she will tell it again. The thing behind the door will eat her and then rush to the red tree at the main gate. As soon as it grabs it, let it jump onto the terrace and wait. This is the tree that needs to be destroyed. As soon as it returned to its original form, he would have to instantly cut it apart. The guy still didn't understand what it was. What kind of creature is this, and how will it turn into a tree? But there was little time. They were caught. It began. The girl asked in a sweet voice who had come to visit her. The monster with huge eyes stared at the handle, pretending to be a duke and reminding her that she had promised to open the doors today. It was the first time the guy had witnessed such nightmarish events in reality. It will soon break the door with such force. It's better to open it. She only managed to warn him that if he didn't want to die, then it would be better if he didn't move. The girl's silhouette froze in place, even though the monster was already inside the room. The girl with red eyes boldly looked fear in the eyes. The guy barely resisted the flow of wind, but still did not understand why she did not dodge. The monster quickly wrapped its tentacles around Lady Simone and lifted her up. She tried to overcome him with her magic, at least a little, but it was weak. He asked if everything was okay. The girl replied that it was bearable. It was time for the main part. She had already told him that the creature would eat her, and as soon as it returned to the tree, the guy had to cut it down. The creature was terrifying, but there was no time to stand and look at its face and huge eyes. According to the girl's plan, the prince should jump now. Fear crept into his blood. His pupils narrowed. The blonde was afraid he wouldn't make it in time. Damn it. That means all the rumors about the Illiston mansion turned out to be true. So now is the time to play tag with the monster. Risking his life, he hadn't had such a task for a long time. His eyes quickly found the nearest window, and he jumped from the second floor of the estate straight into the backyard. The glass fragments and the collision caused considerable damage to the monster. He fell to the floor, remaining in Simone's room like a lifeless piece of junk. But then a small hand formed from the clumped mass, and he carefully clung to the boards with it, trying to use his strength sparingly. After all, he had to crawl a huge distance just to return. He had to have time to return to his body. He ran as fast as he could, across the estate grounds, just to make it in time. There was no breath, and the branches of plants were hitting his face. But a person's life was at stake. He kept thinking about what a terrible place the fucking Illiston mansion was now. And what had just happened. His brain did not want to perceive reality. However, the silhouette of the girl who allowed herself to be eaten was spinning in my head. She was completely fearless. Who was she really anyway? Having reached a certain place, the blonde stopped abruptly, and he hid behind the tree trunks because he saw the main monster of this forest crawling towards his home. Is it really moving? It's just amazing to see such horror in real life. Everything is as she said. He wants to return to his original form, and will do everything possible to achieve this. Enormous in size, eyes red with blood hurried to their destination, and the creature finally reached that very hole, its home. The boy watched attentively, standing to the side, as the huge creature clings to its handle to climb higher. He hadn't yet sensed from afar how terribly the tree smelled of rot. Could it be that Simone is inside it now? That's why it's shaking so much? He didn't even want to think about the fact that she might die. Suddenly, the blonde noticed even more movement inside the monster, and then even a kind of glow from within. It was like a curse aura. This ominous, suffocating energy made it hard to breathe. His throat was constricted by magic and a terrible stench. He couldn't stay here any longer. However, it was too early to be afraid. He had promised her to follow the plan, standing right in front of a huge tree, the trunk of which had grown larger due to the number of people in it. The boy gathered his courage. He remembered her instructions well, so he decided to grab the sword and do the job. Exhaling, he thought one last time about the value of his life. And then I remembered how confidently the girl did it. She thought there was nothing complicated about it, and she came up with a plan that if the tree did eat her, she would have to chop it down with all her might. That's why he swung his sword with all his might and finally did it. After the first blow, he didn't quite understand what was happening. What kind of tree is this that can be cut as easily as paper? His expression changed dramatically when he saw the cross-section of the trunk. Inside, everything was teeming with some kind of red growths of unknown origin. With all his strength, he was hit back with a counterattack, and he was thrown back a couple of meters. Now he seemed to understand that this was not just some kind of curse on the estate, and the real energy of death. With the help of magic, she took the lives of hundreds of people. The guy stood aside from this terrible energy, not understanding why nothing was happening, and the girl was not freed. He knew it, and that's why he swore to stay away from any dangerous business. It was necessary to urgently save her before it was too late. These growths slowly pulsated, like living people, until one moment they suddenly exploded, sending a powerful ultrasound echoing throughout the estate. Pieces of red shells flew to the sides and fell to the ground. The guy stood there in surprise, looking at everything that was happening, not believing his eyes. How did it explode? What happened? And what happened to Lady Simone? Looking up, he finally noticed what was happening. The girl was hanging in the air, surrounded by some kind of magical aura. The purple ball seemed to swallow the girl, but she continued to float with her eyes closed, until she began to descend and opened her red necromancer eyes. Slowly, she reached the ground and touched it with her feet. And after everything that happened, Simone calmly extended her finger and showed a class with her hand, praising the guy for an excellent job. The guy could no longer understand anything. He thought she was dead. And now, as it turns out, she actually blew up the monster. Well, yes, and he chopped it up. Thanks to him, she survived. The brunette laughed and added that it smelled so bad that she almost threw up, and how good it is that she survived and is finally here, safe. Yes, they succeeded. They coped, but the blonde continued to watch her suspiciously. While the girl was shaking all this gunk off her hands and clothes, he noticed that the color of her hair had changed. Just like the color of the eyes, it now turned red. The girl simply suggested returning to the room. But she did something amazing, yet she reacts as if it were ordinary. Okay, he worked hard and now he can go and rest. She'd better wash herself, otherwise the stench is simply unbearable. Leaving him at the gate, Simone ran as fast as she could, saying that they would see each other tomorrow. Even when night fell, he could not come to terms with it and not think about her. Black hair and red eyes, emanating death energy. All the necromancers were already exterminated 300 years ago. However, it turns out that someone still managed to stay. His trembling hand clenched into a fist. Now he has hope for the future, because the necromancer's powers are enough to lift the curse from his father. He arrived at the mansion to find some information about curses, who knew that she would meet a necromancer. What luck! The guy's blue eyes lit up with joy. A simple task turned into an unimaginable success. Morning came, and all the estate workers went outside, not believing their eyes. No one could believe that the tree had really disappeared. What could have happened this night? Is this girl really real? The worker, looking at all this, muttered something under his breath. And he didn't even notice how the Duke came up from behind and noted that it was true, and the girl kept her promise. She did it tonight, so her word can be trusted. Was the entrance to the mansion always so beautiful? Even the sun came out? The gentleman asked Keller to open the gate, because they needed to see their guest out. Meanwhile, Lady Simone slept soundly in her bed, completely exhausted after such a scolding. Anna woke her up and wished her good morning, as always. The girl asked what time it was, but when she opened her eyes, she saw a strange picture in front of her, a bunch of maids asking her what she would like for breakfast. What is everyone fussing about, and what were they all doing here so early in the morning? The girls all answered at once. They, as before, simply listened to her sincerely. She could call them at any time. She's never even seen them. What are they even talking about? She urgently needs to tell the Archduke that she doesn't need so many servants. Running into the man's room, she only saw him calmly sipping tea. She arrived just in time. He was ready for tea, and now he definitely trusted her. From this day on, she is an honored guest of the mansion, and he is ready to provide her with everything she asks for. Now let him sit down in the seat opposite. And his room was hit by the sun's rays. The expensive furniture sparkled with new colors, something they were not used to. Now she had to try to remove all the curses at home, of course. That was their agreement. Looking out the window into the courtyard, the girl wondered why everyone was behaving like this today. It was strange. The man pouring chamomile tea said it was good for the brain and body. She mentally assumed that Luivi had already left this place. Now it's time to tell you what exactly happened last night. Well, Ren cut it down, and she simply used the energy of death to blow up the tree. But the man wanted a different answer. He is interested in other curses, how this tree came to be, and why they couldn't get rid of it. This monster was very cowardly, weak, but annoyingly cunning and smart. Even though he was a monster, he still thirsted for life and wanted to live as long as possible. He would sneak into the mansion looking for victims, but he was afraid that the locals would quickly find his weak spot, so he moved at night when everyone was asleep. To remain unnoticed, he sought out those who were not sleeping and devoured them. She said that the monster was weak, so why couldn't they defeat it all this time? That's the trick. This creature put all its strength into defense. That's why it was so hard. So that an ordinary person cannot harm him in any way, but he weakens the moment he gives his power to someone else. At the moment when it absorbs people, so she tracked everything and asked Ren to cut down the tree. So she let him eat her in order to break down her defenses, something like that. Clutching his head, he said that she didn't seem to feel sorry for herself at all. However, he still didn't understand some details. How she understood all this. How did she find out about his origins? Even their family didn't know. Well, it's not even clear what to answer him. She couldn't say that she simply read about it in history. It's something like knowledge that is passed down from generation to generation, and everyone knew about it. He was very surprised, because the line of necromancers had been extinct for 300 years, and here she was sitting in front of him. Great, he bought it and now wants to know more about it. After a short conversation, the man let her go. Now the girl is free. However, if he didn't ask what she would do next, then he trusted her completely with the rest of the curses. The girl was about to go into the room when she suddenly saw the maid shouting her name and running forward. Stopping, she quickly and breathlessly asked what the gentleman had said and whether the lady was staying in the mansion. Well, yes, of course, because his lordship was convinced of her abilities. By the way, it's definitely time to take a look at the manual. Suddenly, the girls looked around, hearing footsteps. Someone was walking straight towards them. Simone saw the silhouette of a lady in a proper dress. She seemed gloomy to her. The sound of her heels echoed down the long, high-ceilinged corridor. The woman looked too thin. Her eyes were dark as a shadow, and her cheekbones were prominent. The first thing Simone noticed was the horrific smell of blood and corpses, so bad that she wanted to cover her mouth with her hand. But the maid noticed in time that this was the Archduchess, and she needed to quickly bow her head. That's it. That's right. The Illiston family, I think their name was on the board. There was a lot written in that book. But Rule 100 said not to enter the Duchess's chambers. Do not knock or pass by her chambers. That was how categorical everything was. Besides the fact that no one knew what was happening behind the doors of these chambers, all the maids have long known that for the Archduchess, every meal is usually served for two. The story began exactly a year ago in the same estate. A new maid named Ree appeared at the mansion and was immediately given a tour, and they showed him where the office was, where the gentleman spent most of his time, and advised him to behave quietly nearby. The manager wanted her to whisper as she passed by, so that the girl would know that this place was cursed, so much so that no one can survive here. But in reality, the atmosphere turned out to be much more pleasant than she expected. So what that means is, if she locks herself in and follows the rules, everything will be fine. They walked along the corridors for a long time, until the man ordered them to stop. And then he explained that the door in front of them led to the Archduchess's chambers. He asked her if she had remembered everything from the manual, and she nodded obediently. I especially remember rule number 100. Do not enter the Duchess's chambers. Just looking at those doors made her feel creepy. Should the chambers look so neglected? The man continued to talk about how her cleaning area ended exactly where they were standing, and it would be better for her never to be interested in her ladyship's chambers, and let her not pass by them at all. And also, she only needed to do what he told her. The girl agreed once again. Ria slowly began to settle into the mansion, following all the rules and getting along well with the other employees. She became especially good friends with the maids. They often told each other where they were going and why. However, despite cleaning the rooms and washing the floors, there was still one thing she found difficult to cope with. Every time she passed the Archduchess's chambers, she wondered if anyone lived there at all. Leaving the bucket with the rag aside, she walked closer to the door. Her trembling hand almost touched the handle. Suddenly, the girl pulled herself together. No, she shouldn't be so curious. She needed to get back to cleaning. Suddenly, someone wheezed behind her. The person in the room seemed to sense her presence. The girl turned around. She definitely wasn't imagining it. A voice came from behind the door. And it happened again. The voice telling her not to forget something. The words were repeated 100 more times before the doors opened and blood appeared through the crack. The girl took a step back. She had never seen so much blood before. She wondered whose it was, but she remembered that no one was allowed to enter the Archduchess's chambers. However, the kind soul assumed that her grace might have become ill and therefore politely inquired about her well-being. A terrible likeness of the Archduchess looked at her from the doorway. A very thin woman with sunken cheekbones croaked that she needed to think. The girl, horrified, continued asking if she was okay. She was already beginning to tremble with fear, but still tried to find out with concern if anything was hurting her. I really wanted to help this lady until I looked closely at what was in the room. Behind the silhouette of the Archduchess, she saw someone's bloody body tied with ropes to a post. The lady began to ask, as if aggressively, why she couldn't remember a simple rule. And suddenly, throwing open the door, she ran out with a knife at the girl. The maid ran as fast as she could, forgetting about the bucket and her duties. What kind of horror is going on in this estate? And why did her grace rush at her with a knife? The girl was already mentally saying goodbye to life, without any hope of salvation. Perhaps it was fear and haste that were to blame. But when she, pale with horror, rushed down the stairs, she stumbled on a couple of steps and, rolling head over heels, fell down, falling to her death. The poor girl didn't even have time to understand that she was dying. Tears were rolling down her face. Even lying in a pool of her own blood, she tried to call for help. However, the woman remained standing in place. And then she shouted at her that it was her own fault. There was no point in showing curiosity. This is the story behind this rule. The girl slammed the book shut, so apparently abruptly that even the maid Anna was afraid that something had happened to Lady Simone. The curse from the last page of the manual was the main reason why Simone was kidnapped in the original. Upon first reading, it seems that the curse is connected to the Duchess, but in reality, it was placed on their son, Jace, who was forgotten by this world. The very curse that the original Simone never managed to break. Exactly. High healing skills are needed to solve this problem. And she, as a necromancer, possessed only destructive power. Now in the Empire of Ruan, there is neither a saint nor a holy one. But it looks like she will have to find such a person. There is no other choice. The maid had no idea what she was saying or where she was going. The girl replied that she urgently needed to speak with the Archduke. The maid asked if she could help in any way, and then she was asked to find a magic hair dye. The color is not important. The main thing is that it lasts longer. Why don't they go after her together? Then Simone could choose the right color. Stopping at the door, the girl was very surprised how to understand together. Although if you think about it, when was the last time she went shopping at all? Okay, so be it. The maid immediately rushed to prepare everything for their expedition, and they agreed to meet in the chambers. Simone looked at the girl for a long time, as if thinking about something. She just quickly ran to get ready. It seemed like she was genuinely helping her, and not because it was her responsibility. The last thing she saw of Anna was the white bow on her waist from her maid's apron. Then the girl disappeared around the corner. Sitting right in front of the Archduke, the girl demanded that he get the precious stone for her. He noticed that she looked better and better every day, and all thanks to him. I wonder if she's decided which curse she'll break next. Yes, that's why she's asking for this precious stone. and judging by how prettier she has become, the girl seems to have completely settled in. Not only does she know what she needs to do to achieve this, but she has chosen the curse itself. Known as the Saint's Wish, this stone will allow her to remove the next curse. Upon hearing the name of the jewel, the Archduke's face changed. But does this stone even exist in this world? A magical stone from a story about the awakening of hidden power after a girl woke up. It is said that 300 years ago, a mysterious stranger gave her a holy red stone, which caused her to succumb to base desires. That is why the stone later received such a name. In an empire where there is not a single saint, only it possesses divine power. In the original story, it was never used on Jace, but if she tries to combine her power and the stone's power, she might be able to help him. The only problem was that even in the original story, the location of the stone was not revealed. It was said that he was found on the seashore by an old woman from a coastal village, but he thought it was a simple legend. But even if it does exist, it will be hard to find, because they don't know anything about it. The girl agreed, slowly sipping tea. She understands everything perfectly. And then she added that the god of death told her that the stone lay deep in the sea. The men were speechless as to how the god of death had told her this. The girl held back her laughter. Well, yes, the god of death. Why do they have such faces? She just repeated what was written in the story. In any case, the exact location is still unknown to her. The servant inquired as to what curse the search for the stone from the legends had been started for, the last one in the manual. A curse placed on the Archduchess and the eldest son of the Illiston family, Jace Carl Illiston. Hearing this statement, the man almost dropped his cup of tea from his hands in surprise. He had absolutely no idea what she was talking about, or was pretending not to. Therefore, the girl repeated once again that she came here with only one purpose, to remove curses. Save the estate, so he doesn't have to hide anything from her. The advisor standing nearby called out to Lady Simone. He could not listen to this any longer. After all, the gentleman has no children, and he will not tolerate such disrespect, at least in his presence. But the man stopped Kelra, noting that the girl was their salvation and that they needed to treat her with respect. And with a suspiciously nervous look, he suddenly asked sharply to leave them alone. The servant looked at his master in surprise, but decided not to argue with his order. As soon as he left, the man's mood and look changed, and he suddenly asked sharply how she found out about Jace. Simone replied calmly, Jace was cursed and forgotten by this world, and she promises to remove absolutely all curses from the estate. Does he really think she would take on such a task without preparation? As if with hope in his voice, the man asked if she could really remove these two curses. When she replied that she wasn't entirely sure, but would at least try, he grabbed his head and asked her to try anyway. But she didn't need to be persuaded, and such an outcome was entirely possible if they got the stone. The Archduke promised to contact the Adventurers Guild. Since this is a very dangerous stone, they cannot send just anyone to get it. The girl was about to leave and was walking towards the door when suddenly a man's voice called out to her. He asked Simone with sadness in his voice if his son would survive if she lifted the curse. Opening the door in front of her, she replied that she didn't know. It all depended on his condition. She doesn't even know where he is yet. Turning around, she asked to call her when the guild sends someone. The days in the estate began to pass faster. The work of removing the curses was in full swing. The man asked to contact the Adventurers Guild. They would need at least 5 high-class adventurers from there. They shouldn't hire a magician, according to legend. The more a person uses magic, the more vulnerable he is to temptation. With all due respect, the servant asked permission to ask the master a question. He asked if there was anything he didn't know. Without turning around, the Archduke looked and admired the views of the estate from the window, and then replied that no, and he still won't understand how everything will be resolved. His friend will definitely find out about it. Enough talk and curiosity. The most important thing is that he understands what needs to be done. Yes. And today he received a message from an informant. Inside the folder is all the information. The shelter worker spoke as soon as he was given the money. It seems that the fact that the girl was a necromancer became known immediately. Apparently, her parents simply couldn't cope with her and sent her to an orphanage. Adolescence, dirty black hair. Who would need such a girl? No one understood. There were rumors that she often got into trouble. They say she even tried to commit suicide. She was too afraid of ending up in an occult society. In her place, anyone would have rather chipped in than fall into their hands. Studying the documents, the Archduke did not understand what they were all talking about. It turns out she came here to survive, and certainly doesn't look like a thief. Isn't the shelter she escaped from under his influence? That's right. The address given is within his territory. In that case, he no longer needed such a miserable place. The man gave the order to get rid of it, and the servant obeyed him at that very second. Suddenly, their dialogue was interrupted by knocks on the door. He quickly asked Keller to open the door. The door creaks, and the mysterious guest is allowed in. However, for some reason, he was in no hurry to do this. Only a couple of seconds later, a lady in a black fluffy dress carefully entered inside, looking straight at the man. Upon seeing the woman, the man's face and demeanor changed. His eyes became kinder, and he politely greeted Flory. Some time later, Lady Simone met a familiar face at the estate. A lot of time had passed since their last meeting. The guy smiled sweetly and complimented her. The girl looked good. Did she really think that, after the tree mission, he would join Abel's team, as it happened in the original story? The guy also didn't think that he would meet her again, but the Archduke hired him again. Of course, he is not the only adventurer, but since someone was needed, he volunteered to be the leader. Wasn't it fate that he seemed to have become much friendlier since their last meeting, and constantly complimented her radiant hair? Wasn't she a brunette? Oh, right, the girl grabbed the ends. Now she has blonde hair. Well, yes, there was. Magic paint works wonders, unless something is wrong. She hoped that the story would be changed, and the episodes with Simone and the Illiston family would be omitted. However, Luivi met her before Abel, and now seems to have decided to become her ally. Such a naive boy, and follows the first person he meets, like a duckling. Trying to justify this logically, the girl recalled the story. In the original, the guy joined Abel's squad because of his interest in the powers of necromancers. The Archduke greeted the boy with respect, even though he didn't expect Simone to come too. She just knew that he would call her anyway, so when they met Ren in the corridor, they decided to go together. Exhaling tiredly, the girl plopped down in her seat. They wouldn't mind if she told them details about the upcoming work. This time, Ren was required to find a precious stone. It didn't sound difficult. He had carried out such orders before, but this time it would be unusual. After all, what they are looking for is not a simple piece of jewelry, and is called the Saint's Wish. But isn't this stone a simple myth? Does he even exist? Ignoring the question, she began to talk about a quiet village on the seashore. And they say that the Saint's Wish was thrown from there into the sea, but she did not know where it was. All she knows is that this is a village where abandoned old people go to live. So when he meets someone there, let him ask if they have seen a red decoration in the sea. The shocked blonde sat silently, staring at the girl. If they hadn't seen anything like it, he would have to search the entire sea, and if he didn't find it there, he would have to look further. Even the Archduke himself suddenly rose from his chair, and looking expressively at the guy, with hope in his eyes, he asked if he could find this stone. Well, first we need to find the village itself. After all, this information is not enough, and he needs much more details. However, the search for the legendary stone is worth searching the sea. The sunny weather and light breeze improved the mood as much as possible. The guy suddenly asked Simone, since she knows a lot about this stone, whether there is a risk that he will be enchanted by the stone. But she only calmly replied that he shouldn't worry about it now. He's not so dependent on magic that he'll succumb to temptation. Ren seemed to have received an answer to his question, but his face still looked concentrated. He stopped Lady Simone in the middle of the road and asked her directly, wouldn't she like to join him and go after the stone together? The girl looked worried, as if she hadn't understood what he was talking about at first. But why her and not someone else? The guy already guessed where the village might be. Well, she knew a lot about the stone, so she would probably feel its energy faster than them. With a smirk on her face, the girl refused. Why should she bother so much if the Archduke had hired adventurers? If he thought that an adventurer was not enough to help, the girl could ask to hire a magician. Laughing, Ren repeated, he doesn't need a magician, he needs her. It seems like a blush appeared on his cheeks. Phew, what nonsense! The girl turned sharply and walked away, reminding him that it seemed like it was time for him to go. The guy asked where she was going, but the girl rudely sent him to get to work, and she had her own plans. She's already said everything, so why does he keep asking if he can join her? The irritated girl at the door turned around sharply and asked why he was so intrusive. Why is he trying to act like he's her servant? Although, wait a minute, that's a good idea. Thinking about this guy again, she invited him to be with her. He smiled and blushed again, of course, because he was interested in Lady Simone. Well, and the power that she possesses too. The girl stepped closer, and she said that if he really wanted this, then she would allow him to be with her. There is only one condition: he will be nearby as an employee. The blue-eyed boy's pupils narrowed. He was caught off guard. The employee apparently didn't expect to hear this at all. Well, yes, he is a high-class swordsman, and since Ren accepts quests from the Adventurers Guild, it means he is also good at gathering information. And she just needs such a reliable person, and he said that he wants to be with her, because she is interesting to him. Simone guessed that he had never received such an offer before as the Crown Prince, and his face confirmed it. He seemed confused, so he replied that he needed to think about it. That's great. Until the next meeting. Humming a song joyfully to herself, Simone climbed the stairs to her chambers, since the Archduke had given her money for expenses. Then you can go somewhere and take Anna with you. After all, this girl became her friend. Just think, she hadn't seen her all day today. It's strange. Maybe she asked for time off and has a day off. However, they had plans together. Did she really forget? And what should she do? Simone screamed her name as she searched, forgetting about Rule 88. You can't search for a missing servant. The girl decided to just go to bed and figure it out in the morning. However, she woke up in a warm bed too early, from the noise of the maids around her, who immediately began asking how she slept that night. The girl, rubbing her eyes, asked in response whether Anna had returned, as she had not seen her until last night. However, everyone around abruptly changed the subject and suggested serving breakfast. The maid immediately turned around and ran to carry out an order that she had not even been given. What a strange and unpleasant feeling, as if they are pretending to be busy. Lady Simone replied that it was time to serve breakfast. She would just step away for a minute. The sun shone through the dark crimson curtains. A new day had dawned, but the atmosphere seemed just as ominous. Just think, this is the Illiston family mansion, and a person has disappeared here. Isn't she taking it too lightly? The girl walked down the corridor, lost in her thoughts, until someone's voice called out to her. Turning around, she stared at the maid with a crazy look. Of course, she was scared, and she immediately apologized. It just seemed to her that the lady was looking for something, so she decided to help her. Simone asked her again directly if she had seen Anna. She hadn't shown up since yesterday, so the girl thought that perhaps she had gone away on business. She didn't even notice it, although now that she mentioned it in the dialogue, the maid was worried. It looks like she didn't even show up for the morning briefing. Could something have happened? Anna suddenly disappeared, and so Simone is now looking for her everywhere. If she suddenly meets a friend, let her tell her that they are looking for her. The maids, who had previously been so focused on their work, suddenly turned around, and they stared very strangely at this couple. And then they began to vigorously discuss the routine again, whether anyone had finished putting away yesterday's groceries, and so on. There was clearly something wrong here, and Simone had yet to find out about it. Suddenly, someone approached the girls and called Reese by name. It turned out to be some stranger. The lady sternly asked what she was doing there, and then Simone introduced herself as Ruth, the head maid of this mansion. It seemed like this was their first meeting. Suddenly, she grabbed Reese's hand and asked permission to take her away right now. Otherwise, she had already looked all over for this child. And also, it would be much better if the girl returned to her quarters right now, because this is the servants' area, and guests should not go here. Why are they behaving like this? Is it really on purpose? She came here with one goal, to find Anna. The woman promised that if she saw the child, she would definitely tell her that they were looking for her. Well, okay. In that case, there is nothing left to do but return to my quarters. Upon returning to the room, the lady began to read some book. Judging by the reactions of those around her, they were clearly hiding something from her. Okay, for now she can try to find any curse related to this in the manual, and if she still doesn't find anything, then you will have to turn to his lordship personally for help. Rule number 88. Do not look for a missing servant. Wow, that wasn't even in the novel. And why were the maids suddenly so interested in what curse she would break this time? It's strange that when she asked about Anna, they could barely utter a word in response. But then, Upon hearing about the curse about the missing servants, they screamed. One of the girls screamed that it was too dangerous. True, but she couldn't leave her friend in trouble. Simone slammed the book shut and decided that she would get it back by any means necessary. From that moment on, the maids became both frightened and serious. One of the girls with green eyes suddenly started talking. Regarding the curse, there is one more rule that is not in the manual. The brunette wondered what the hell it was, what they were even talking about. Meanwhile, the maid, closing her eyes, promised to tell everything and asked to save Anna. Of course, Simone agreed to listen to them. That same girl came closer and began to speak barely audibly. At the moment when the sun sets and the moon rises, if she ever, while passing by in the underground corridor, hears the voice of the missing person, then let him not answer him under any circumstances and immediately go to another floor. The servant who disappeared will soon return to work as if nothing had happened, but even if he speaks, he must not be looked at. And even more so, answer until he disappears completely. Simone was shocked. Was it really possible that the missing servant would return after all? Wait a minute, but why isn't this written in the manual then? It's just that the nobles cannot know absolutely everything that happens among the servants. Bowing, the girl continued speaking. She knew that it was shameless of her to ask a lady for such things, but she was simply begging to save their friend. Simone already understood what she meant, so she allowed them to go. The night of reading the book came quickly. Just think, such a rule actually circulated among the servants. Now she finally understood why everyone was acting so suspiciously. The headmaid was probably worried that Reese would blurt out something unnecessary. She had planned a rest before lifting the curse of Jace and Archduchess Florrie. But no, that wasn't possible. Anna, after all, was much more concerned about how one could think about rest. The girl immediately ran out of the room, and when she met the annoying boy, she honestly replied that she was going to remove the curse. Pulling on her robe, she crept along the gloomy corridor, remembering the words of the maid, at the moment when the sun sets and the moon rises. If she hears the voice of the missing person while walking through the underground corridor, she must not answer under any circumstances. Let him go straight to the next floor. Looking down, the girl realized she should have taken a lamp with her. Suddenly, some sound caught her attention. These were someone's steps from below, if you think about who it could have been. Another maid who might fall into this insidious trap. The little naive child who came to this estate to work, honestly, has already fallen for the trick. This time, the sweet voice of the curse lured Reese to the bottom with an unknown force. Without thinking about the consequences for a second, Simone rushed after her. And fortunately, she managed to grab the hand of the girl who was blindly walking to her death. She immediately asked where the maid was going at such a late hour. Seeing that she was not responding and not even turning around, the girl began to scream louder. What happened? Why can't she just come to her senses? Suddenly, the girl turned around in tears. Her face was full of horror, and she said that her body simply did not obey. This can't be true. Could she have already fallen under the influence of the curse because they talked about Anna's disappearance? The girl asked for help, but Simone did not understand what to do, because something with great force was pulling them down. At this rate, she too might get sucked in, wondering what the hell was going on, and why that door looked like a black hole. An alluring, huge hole, begging for a quick surrender. Suddenly, they both heard Anna's voice coming from right there. Enchanted, Reese gave in and started spouting complete nonsense, as if she was wrong, and asking her friend for help. Both girls were now shoeless, lying on the floor, fighting for Reese's life as best they could. The girl was shaking and gasping for breath, and her face was wet with tears. Suddenly, she felt a warm, gentle touch on her face. It was supposedly the angelic silhouette of Sister Anna, but in real life, a terrible monster turned out to be in her place. But no, in an instant, huge and long red tentacles threads appeared from the hole. Ignoring her inner fear, Simone rushed to the girl's aid and asked Anna to let them go. Grasping these long, thin threads, the girl herself was worried about getting entangled in this horror. Pulling it towards herself, she realized that this material was an endless illusion. The creature that had previously called itself Anna was already holding the silhouette of a fragile girl in its tentacles. The terrible monster made of incomprehensible fibers beckoned to itself more and more. However, Simone was not going to give up so easily, where she decided to take her friend. Reese needed to hold out a little longer. The necromancer was already starting to use magic. Just one powerful flash of magic and a wave of the hand. The monster's face began to corrode. It seems to be working a little more. A couple of seconds later, the maid flew a couple of meters to the side. And then she fell to the ground. Her friend rushed towards her. Having raised the maid to her feet, she immediately asked if everything was okay with her. The girl whimpered quietly in her arms, thanking her savior. However, the curse has not yet been lifted, and to remove it, one must know the true nature, so it is likely not gone yet. And what's more important, can the girl even explain what happened to her here? The maid, her hands shaking, clutched her head and began to tell her story. She was walking down the stairs and suddenly heard Anna's voice. And then it was as if she was bewitched, and her memories were cut off. When she came to, she was already lying here on the floor. Simone stood up and asked Reese to return to the room alone. No, not that. The girl immediately understood what she was up to. Not that. She's not going to go there. No way, it's so dangerous. The girl pounced on her with hugs. The grip was strong. She simply begged her to return to the chambers together. But no, she was right here and stayed to do something dangerous. But if she is too scared alone, she can take her back. The girl replied that she would go herself and wished Simone good luck and that he be careful. Great, so it's time to go. Having entered through the portal, she seemed to have already walked a long distance, and there was no one around. The area around was too gloomy, concrete floor and walls. However, my feelings told me that this illusion could not be trusted. Suddenly, the girl heard a light knocking sound. Turning around, she saw nothing but a metal fence, and there were some strange little details. It was impossible to make out and understand anything. Everything is clear. It looks like the curse will not manifest itself anymore today. It's probably time to go back. As stated, the servant who disappeared will soon return to work as if nothing had happened. However, even if he talks to someone, you must not look at him, and even more so to answer, so everyone around ignored Anna's silhouette. It all felt so strange and unusual, my friend. As usual, offered tea with a smile. However, this is not the real her, but a substitute creature. Simone was calmly sipping tea when suddenly someone came to visit her and started talking. It was Ren, as always. It had been a while since he had been here last, but today the atmosphere was special. It seemed like a new curse had appeared, and before he could even think about it, the girl asked him if he knew anything about the were-rat. No, is this really something well known? In general, yes. In the village where she lived, there was a legend about it. The rat collected and ate human nails for a long time, and why did it turn into a human to take his place? While the real owner was away from home, the rat would take his place, and when he returned, a dispute would arise between him and the fake as to who was the real one. In the end, everyone believes the rat and not the real person. People call him a fake and drive him away. It's a terrible story, but why did she remember it? Well, it just occurred to her, so she told me. After all, in their estate, among the maids, no monster can pretend to be a girl. Everyone is one of their own. And by the way, the guy should have already been busy searching for the saint's desire. So what brought him here? Such a sharp question after the legend was told took him by surprise. There was no progress as such yet, but the search itself was going smoothly, and he came to give her an answer regarding the recent proposal. The girl was surprised that he really took all this so seriously. Getting up from the table, the blonde confidently placed his hand over his chest and began to speak. He agreed to join her as a full-time employee. Since he is the crown prince, she didn't expect much, but it seems things are taking a serious turn in the imperial palace. Excellent! This is only to her advantage, since she has acquired a competent and hard-working employee. She could make him work for a while, and when the Demon King rose, she would let the boy go. But for now, she pretended to be looking forward to working with him, and the feeling was mutual. But Ren wanted to stay close and build a relationship. Only in this way could he try to free his father, the Emperor, from the curse. Since he and Lady Simone were now closer, he wanted to ask something. Who is she really? It seems he is not stupid and actually noticed something. It's unclear whether she should have revealed all her cards to him. Okay, it's time to reveal the secret with one snap of your fingers. At that very moment, the girl's hair instantly turned black. Red eyes looked confidently in his direction, and then she confessed that she was actually a necromancer. The guy's eyes turned crazy. He knew it. But were there still people like that in the Empire? Of course, yes. One of them is right in front of him now, sitting and drinking tea. Surely the fact that she is a necromancer is some kind of problem for him. No, he just had one more question. What connects her with Archduke Illiston does not seem like an ordinary business relationship. Of course, it's more visible from the outside, but this is truly a business relationship. And she never said that the Archduke was in charge of them. After all, the main character here is the girl, and this is a very important point. In exchange for lifting the curse that had plagued the Illiston family for 300 years, she was promised a carefree life until she came of age. Then this agreement really does make sense, and that seems to be the end of the questions for the business partner. The guy even had a sore throat from excitement, but he still asked if she was interested in him. Well, this is coming from a guy who is hiding his real identity, and will he even answer her questions? She knows very well about his ability to keep his mouth shut, so this is more than enough for her. He couldn't say how long the search for the saint's work would take. Everyone in the village had already been asked if they knew about the red stone, but there were no results. Suddenly, Simone announced that this problem would have to be dealt with by the end of the week. What nonsense! Wasn't this a long-term order? When it comes to saving lives, the concept of long-term and short-term work is blurred. The sooner you finish, the better. If he can't handle it himself, then let him involve more people and ask the Duke for payment. He understood everything. But what would she do while he was here stubbornly searching for the stone? Just let him not say that she plans to rest. Under no circumstances. Who does he take her for? For now, she will be busy with other curses. Oh, just look what time it is. It looks like they've already discussed everything, so it's time for him to go back. They will see each other as soon as he is ready to bring the precious stone. The girl stood by the window and watched him go, until she heard a voice behind her. Anna asked why Mr. Wren had come. Even if it was at the lady's request, the maid felt somehow awkward that he was in the mansion so often. That's right. If the double starts talking, you can't look at him, and certainly not answer for anything. However, if she wants to lift the curse, she needs to meet her face to face. So the girl turned around abruptly and asked who she was, taking the maid by surprise. At first she got nervous and pretended not to understand what she was talking about, and then her face began to take on a terrible appearance, and she realized that she was being seen. So why did Simone then pretend that she was not there? If he had more time last time, he would have been able to absorb her completely. He just needed a little more time. Anna turned into a terrible monster, her face replaced by teeth and those same tentacles that immediately grabbed the girl. Simone was taken aback and didn't immediately understand what was happening, and her hand was already bitten in the mouth of this beast. The workers came running at her screams, but they didn't understand what was happening. It was a maid and some guy, and they screamed at what they saw. Could it be that this strange creature with tentacles and a monster's mouth is really the old Anna? Simone could barely hold back her tears. What nonsense was going on? Let him let her go right now. The girl pressed her hand against the monster's head, and with her free hand, which did not feel hellish pain, she used the most powerful magic. Drops of blood fell onto the floor, forming a puddle. The monster's face began to melt, just like that time. The likeness of Anna grabbed him in horror and began to say that it was time to run. The rat's clawed paws were already unfolding to escape. The warrior and the maid watched the beast in fear. No one dared to approach. Only Simone, even with her wounded arm, realized that the monster was trying to escape. We need to grab this huge rat and not let it get away. The girl ran with all her might after the fast monster. All the estate workers who saw this horror screamed. Nobody understood what kind of monster it was, in the form of a rat and a man at the same time. Then the maid saw Lady Simone herself. She screamed that this was not Anna, but only her likeness. The girl was about to use magic to destroy this beast. Her focused red eyes and the purple aura of magic around her were frightening. But accumulating energy while running isn't as easy as she thought, so that's why mages in games don't move while casting spells. If she knew that this would happen, she would have started training earlier. Maybe she should make herself a talisman or something like that. Something that will contain dark energy, like in all those movies when they attach it to a ghost. Tired from the chase, the girl, out of breath, admitted that she could no longer run, and she began to pull off her shoes. She needed to forget about the curse and first catch her. How far can she run if you throw a shoe at her? Hitting the head straight, Simone knocked the white-braided monster out cold. He immediately fell to the ground. Well, it finally worked. Black smoke emanated from the object, and it had shrunk tenfold in size. The girl took the small animal by the tail and brought it up. But what she has in her hands now is nothing less than a real rat. At that moment, the Archduke entered the room and asked what all the commotion was about. After throwing out the animal, Simone said that she had caught a rat, and when she tried to escape, she crushed her tail with her boot. The thing is, this is the true form of one of the curses described in the reference book. So that's it, and he thought where the noise was coming from, it must be a rat. The man seemed to think about the girl's behavior. He thought she would just sit with her hands folded until the stone was found. However, she, without sparing herself, rushed to destroy another curse. So now it's removed and they can rest easy, no. Well, she did catch him, of course. But usually, if you eliminate the source of the problem, everything resolves itself. But before, she had never killed living beings. Do I really just need to kill this rat? A trivial task. The man was already drawing his sword. And then, with a sharp and precise push, he pierced the rat's body right through. They are not in a position to allow themselves any sympathy when it comes to a curse. If she doesn't plan to stain the estate with her blood, then let her go and clean her hand. What do you mean, hand? Oh, right. Simone shook her hand in horror. She just remembered what happened to her and where her hand had been. The maid quickly ran up, trying to calm her down. The wound needed to be treated, and most importantly, calm. Meanwhile, the Archduke approached Köhler with an order. We need to find a healer who can go to the mansion immediately. The cost of the job doesn't matter. Just find someone who can get here quickly. The Archduke was about to leave, but suddenly a girl's voice called out to him, asking him to find Anna. The large arched door at the end of the stairs leading to the basement. Anna should be there. She was also attacked by that rat, so the poor girl is in the same condition now. Simone asked to find and save her as soon as possible. But the man froze, as if he didn't understand. He was silent for a couple of seconds, as if considering what he had heard. And then he turned to Kelru and asked if they had such a door in their estate. No, at the end of the stairs leading to the basement, there is only a blank wall. The servant suggested that Lady Simone had made a mistake. Yes, that's probably true. But since Anna, the maid, should be there, let him come down and check this place. My friend was found in the basement hallway. She's currently unconscious, but she's receiving medical attention, so she should wake up soon. As the lady said, the maid's wounds are there, but they are deeper, so serious that with proper treatment, amputation of the fingers was the best solution. Thanks to Lady Simone, who insisted on a healer, she is now undergoing treatment and is making a successful recovery. Surely tomorrow she will be able to return to normal life. Oh, what a relief. The lady was happy and sent the servants out of the room. However, one of the maids remained and asked if the necromancer had any healing powers. Since she doesn't have that kind of strength, maybe she should have tried to stop the bleeding herself. And how could she possibly have tried to catch a rat with a hand like that? It must have been very painful, and all for the sake of saving Anna. The girl just yawned. Well, maybe that's enough whining. The evil maid seemed to stop her flow of speech, gritting her teeth. And then she sweetly said that she was very grateful for saving Anna. After all, if it weren't for Lady Simone, the girl would have died right there. She also apologized for her earlier rude behavior. Does she really talk about her daring antics before? Pfft, nonsense. The lady lay back down on the bed and replied that there was no need to thank her. She could not have done otherwise and not saved Anna. And even if it had concerned someone else, she would have simply ignored it in accordance with the rules of the estate. The girl's last words greatly frightened the maid. She clutched her white apron in her hands out of nerves, and then she turned sharply and walked away, repeating that she was still grateful to her. She'll bring food later, so for now she can sleep. Gossip in the estate spread even faster than breakfast in the chambers. Just a few days later, Simone saw her friend again. She looked very happy. Thanks to the healer, her hands were completely healed. There weren't even any scars left. Shouldn't she rest a little more? But the girl believed that she couldn't shift the work onto her sisters forever. Besides, now she had so much strength and energy that she could even run. In that case, they leave today. We agreed that we would go to the village together. Oh, right. Then you'll just have to wait a minute. Anna will quickly change her clothes and pack her things. Quickly, and let him also bring hair dye. Getting ready together is the best thing there can be. And so, after a couple of hours of riding in the carriage, the girl went inside and saw this mess. Could this really be the territory of the Archduke? 300 years ago, this place was called a city. No, even 200 years ago, it retained a similar appearance to one degree or another, and it's now clear why Kaylee was so alarmed. as if the village was much more dangerous than she thought, especially for women, and even more so for those who were clearly well off, even if she had guards with her. I need to quickly finish all my business and return to the estate. Since the current owner became the head of the family, there are guards here. Humanitarian aid is also being sent, according to rumors. The estate gates were previously locked, and he completely abandoned the management of the territory. It seemed that Bam knew a lot about this village, of course, since he was born here. Then, if she had any questions, she would immediately ask him. The girl's face turned cold with horror. Well, not this. Could it really be those same visions again? She felt the touch of the ghost as if it were real. The same one from that shelter, who had been haunting her all this time, appeared again and whispered nonsense about death. She thought that he had disappeared long ago. They had not seen each other for a long time, but he could not have followed her to the estate. Let him try as much as he wants. She's not afraid anymore, and they need to hurry. A suspiciously overly cheerful man was glad to see Lady Simone. The typical example of a merchant in any story was asking what brought her to this god-forsaken place. The girl came for hair dye. It's an expensive item, but they will find everything. The place seems to meet all the requirements. Their master, the Archduke, also uses it, buying silks, threads, even colored paper. So that's where it all came from. The merchant was asking what color she preferred. They could even order any color if needed. She can take her time and look around here among the bottles, wondering how long the paint lasts after coloring. Well, if she does everything according to the instructions, then a week. But with magicians, the result can last a whole month. Because magic paint is made with the help of magic. If the magician is skilled in handling it, then the hair can retain the pigment much longer. Anna entered the store and answered her question. Wow, in that case, she wanted to buy 2 of each color. Is 6 really a lot? They don't have a lot of money, so they need to buy something. They don't come here often, and my friend spent so much money for the first time. On the way out, the merchant thanked them sincerely. I wonder where they'll go now. The girl wanted to read a book. I wonder if there is a bookstore here. Yes, of course, there is one. Wow, even in this wilderness. The girls walked up to the building together, and opening the doors, saw a booth. Well, it may look shabby, but there are really a lot of books there, especially old ones, which are better than nothing. Simone started asking the void if there was anyone there, and an old man with a gray beard answered her. It didn't look like they had arranged a meeting. No, we didn't agree. Well, in that case, let them leave. He's driving them away. What a horror! Is this even how people do business? Most likely, this is all because this person has another business. They sell not only books here, but also all sorts of goods, even those that cannot be called things. It seems he sells information here. However, the old man is not one to turn away customers, so let them ignore him and just choose books. He behaved too rudely, but the girl was not an ordinary person and replied that she had come to buy books. Decent books can be found in the city, so why did the noble lady choose this rundown village? Let him just take what he needs and leave. What a good way to communicate with clients. Lady Simone was looking for books about the Illiston family, and also about necromancers. The girl carefully read the titles. But in the kingdom, books on such topics are strictly forbidden. So that's why. And the old man still couldn't understand why she had come such a long way, especially in such a dangerous time and place, for the sake of books. And it turns out she came for the most sinister of them. The servants tried to stop her. Searching for forbidden books is a grave crime. Let her stop it now. Her actions may jeopardize the honor of the master. But is this crime more shameful than the fact that he keeps her close? It would be better if they just helped him find the books. There were so many of them that it was hard to spot what he needed. The old man was surprised that anyone was interested in the dilapidated estate these days. But is it strange that a simple subject is interested in his lord? From her manner of speech, it was easy to understand that the girl was not a noblewoman. But it doesn't really matter. She's an unusual person anyway. Nobleman or commoner, the people of this kingdom care nothing for the House of Illiston, many not even suspecting it ever existed. And some think that he disappeared 300 years ago. And why not? Who would worry about a destroyed house anyway? The man wanted to finish speaking about the memory of the name Illiston, when suddenly Anna interrupted him. The girl found a book about this family and held the black volume in her hands. And here is a book about necromancers. What luck! They will take everything. The old man said that they could pay as much as they could and leave, while the assistant in the background did not understand whether it was possible to do that. After some time, they found themselves in a different place. Sitting down on a bench in a neat dress, Simone asked Anna how often she went to this tavern. She replied that she didn't do it often at all. She just dropped by from time to time when she was out running errands. The girl nervously asked the lady if she was happy with the place, since it was just a simple eatery where you could get a filling meal for cheap. She was afraid that the quality of the food was not the best, and she might not like it, so that's what her friend was worried about. Simone nodded in understanding and decided to reassure her. She is also a commoner, and no different from them. If that was the end of her worries, then there was an offer to order something. After a hearty meal, the girl immersed herself in a book. She glanced through the pages, a chronicle of the Illiston family, something she was already familiar with. Anna warned loudly that the books she might find on the market were most likely just a collection of rumors about this family. No one could say for sure where the truth was. Even members of the family themselves did not know why and when the curses were placed. Surely, if the leader of the people who lived 300 years ago does not personally tell the story, the secret will remain unsolved. However, Anna herself seems to know enough about this family. The girl was scared again, because she works there, but she can't really understand anything. Oh well. Simone started on the new volume, surprised that anyone had managed to sell it at all. Inside, everything was as usual. A description and physical characteristics of the necromancer, birth and observation. Dozens of pages were flipped through one after another, but there was nothing useful, until the girl got caught up in the fall of Anasis, the last necromancer, and how the necromancer ended his life on the gallows. Without showing any reaction, the girl coughed. It was too dusty here to read at the table. Perhaps she would do that later. By the way, now she had questions for the guy too. For such a poor village, there were a lot of shops here, but not many residents. The city's economy here is supported rather by secret visitors, hunters, mercenaries, and so on, who are rumored to be involved in shady business. He couldn't go into detail before, but the bookstore owner they met probably makes his living as an informant. This territory is ruled by a family that is completely ignored by the kingdom. There are few local residents, and there is zero oversight. So the place is ideal for dubious deals. But didn't he say that the new Archduke has turned his attention to these lands? The gentleman is really trying very hard, but some things are simply impossible to handle, and he himself doesn't know all the details. But, from his lordship's point of view, the functioning of the economy here can already be considered a miracle. Anna agreed. After all, thanks to the fact that Lady Simone is with them, things are getting better. But she is only here to remove the curses from the estate. Suddenly, Simone fell silent and looked away in surprise. She froze in shock, asking what it was. But Anna didn't understand what she was talking about. Her friend quickly waved her hand, as if protecting her, and ordered her not to look in that direction. But she had already thought that today would pass without incident. At first, she thought it was just a man with some strange long hat. But now that he was closer, she could get a better look at the details of this horror. While Simone stared at him with wide eyes, he calmly asked something. His blue eyes seemed angry to her, and his voice asked where he could buy all sorts of things. It was just that he was here for the first time and was a little lost. The man looked so polite from the outside, but those pairs of eyes were looking straight at her. With a trembling voice, she answered, "About 2 blocks to the left of this place." He smiled. What a relief that he wasn't too lost, by the way. It seemed he had never had the pleasure of meeting a lady before. Just think, he had never met someone so beautiful. Maybe she just doesn't like banquets and such social events. Simone hesitated to answer, but in her mind, she wished for him to go away and get lost. The man extended his hand and introduced himself as Viscount Chose Oliver. And since fate had brought them together, perhaps it was worth getting to know each other better over a cup of tea. This made her angry. How much longer can one talk? If he came to such a place for a reason, let him refrain from such questions. Oh, what a pity. The blonde, with the same creepy smile, apologized for the inconvenience and took his leave. Well, really, he's finally leaving. But that swarm with a bunch of eyes turned out to be a black shadow of a ghost. Simone was frightened, although it was not the first time she had seen such a sight. When the man turned away and walked away, she saw the body on his shoulder even better. And for some reason, at that moment, it even seemed to her that the ghost was about to fall right on her. So she leaned away. Anna, surprised but cautious, asked if everything was okay with the lady. She leaned over and remained standing to the side, paralyzed by fear. Only after hearing her friend's voice did the girl realize that everything was okay. Looking at her hands, she didn't see a ghost. Nothing happened. And this ghost that was sitting on his shoulder disappeared, simply evaporated like a bad dream. The surprised man returned to ask if the lady was okay. She quickly began to collect the books into a stack. Everything was fine. Maybe she just imagined it. However, the trembling in his hand gave away a premonition that something was wrong here. Turning to her friends, the girl ordered them to get ready, despite their discouraged faces. They need to get back to the mansion immediately, regardless of whatever the hell just happened. They returned to the estate only at night, having made a difficult journey. Little changed in the maid's work during their departure. As always, they carried out their assignments and chatted pleasantly with each other. However, the head maid was still not happy with this. She was angry that they were slacking off while no one was looking. With her shout, she quickly sent them back to work. So much noise for just a short break. And why does she act as if she is the only one working in this estate? However, Lady Simone had something she wanted to tell them, so she asked them to stay and gather together. The girl handed them some leaves and told them to take 10 of them each. She bought them today in the village while she was on a trip. From now on, they will all use this as some kind of amulet. She will need to fill these leaves with her power, so let them cut them to the right size themselves. There were a lot of them, so it's better to do this in your free time. Only one senior maid decided to rebel and asked why they were doing this. And in a rude manner, she advised Lady Simone to better focus on her work. While sipping hot tea, she asked a counter-question. What if this is her job? She does all this so that no one else can suffer from the curse. As it did with Anna, it is only for their own protection. Of course, she would be lying if she said that she was not doing this to make her life easier. But still, moreover, it was high time to put this evil maid in her place. If the girl says so, then fine, she agrees. And then the girl politely asked if Simone was okay. I just heard from Anna that she suddenly became ill in the village. The girl's red eyes dropped to the floor, and the silhouette appeared in her head again. She certainly wasn't mistaken then, and she's more than sure that this thing was definitely looking for something then. Moreover, she remembered one more small detail. The same ghost that had been sitting on her shoulder the whole time she was looking around immediately ran away as soon as it sensed danger. Simone replied that everything was fine, but they made her think again about this very scary story. She hardly wanted to hear it. The maid did not agree to listen to her and asked her to forget about it. She was just curious. Okay, enough chatter. It's much better to get ready to prepare another amulet for the Archduke. A faithful servant came into the man's chambers and asked what he would like for dinner. But he was more interested in how well Flori ate. She always left more than half of the food untouched. However, it is better not to forget that the number of dishes they serve is large, so this is not critical. And regarding the Adventurers Guild, the message they received today said that they found the Saint's wish. Is this really true? Why didn't they tell him about it right away? The guild decided to immediately go to the magician Orkin to make sure it was authentic. However, on the way they were attacked. Apparently, the gem was stolen by someone very capable. Of course, this infuriated the Duke. What idiots, and Ren, he is the best among swordsmen. How could he allow the robbery? They replied that the enemy was skilled in his abilities. He immediately defeated their group and fled. Ren's squad went in pursuit. So they have to find him soon when time is running out and everything has started to go wrong. The man seemed to feel how, with each passing day, Flori and Jace were losing themselves more and more. All hope was on the girl who decided to try to remove 2 curses. She didn't give a clear answer, but her face was filled with a strange confidence. If only he had found out about the necromancers a little earlier. If he had not delayed in removing the curses, would his family have been different then? At that very moment, there was a knock on the door from Simone. The girl entered in a simple dress, almost a nightgown, and closed the doors tightly. What brought her here, if she didn't come empty-handed? Approaching the Duke, she looked him straight in the eyes and handed him some leaves. And she said that it was an amulet, made by impregnating a thin sheet of paper with her power. However, this is still an experiment, so it may not work as expected. She just thought it would be a good idea to use it to avoid more victims in cases like Anna's. After staring at the paper for a long time, the man barely managed to utter his gratitude. Of course, It was difficult to fill such a number of sheets with her power, so she cannot guarantee the quality 100%. He was still grateful for the amulet, and also for saving the servant, because now this child is alive, so thank you. Maybe it's not too late to fix everything. It so happened that he himself wanted to contact her to tell her the news about the saint's wish, so let him sit down. After all, the situation has now taken an unexpected turn. A cry was heard among the estate at night. How to understand that it was stolen, to be precise? Then this is a possible desire of the saint. The swordsman dealt with the group in an instant and escaped with it. However, why did they want to take it to some magician and not to her? And what kind of magician is he? The mage Orkin, I think. There's a connection between him and Ren, so it seems he turned to the right person. It's impossible not to know that name. A great genius magician who was supposed to appear at the end of the first season of the story. He is also the companion of the main character Abel. The girl grabbed her head in despair. She could still understand why Luivi would go to this magician whom he trusted so much. But she is the only one in this world who knows about the existence of this stone. So what kind of madman stole it? They reported that they would be able to return later than planned, but exactly on the promised date. However, it was better to think of a backup plan just in case the Adventurers Guild couldn't meet the deadline. The man was counting on them. After all, if they didn't have the saint's desire, then she wouldn't be able to lift the curse from Jace, so now the girl felt more responsible than ever. Returning to her quarters, Simone found the same maids there, which surprised her. They hadn't left yet because they wanted to finish making the bed. Suddenly, the head maid coughed nervously into her fist, and then, blushing, she thanked the lady for the amulets she had provided. But hadn't she said that they were useless things? Kaylee had been working in this estate for a long time, and she was still afraid of curses. Scary things always remain scary. Meanwhile, the second maid noticed a certain amulet on the table, and reaching out to it with her hands, she noticed that it looked different from all those that she had given to the others. At the last moment, Simone managed to warn her that she shouldn't touch him. After all, this is a dangerous amulet for driving out evil spirits. If an ordinary person touches it, he can be absorbed by the energy. So let them see for themselves, and let the other servants also be aware of this. The head maid asked how she could leave something so dangerous in plain sight, unattended. Well, that's why she said that he can't be touched. Oh well, the girl hadn't spent so much energy during the day before, and now she was very tired. Amid the girl's angry muttering that it would be better to remove this dangerous black amulet, Simone jumped into bed. She also added that it is best to go to bed and sleep in a normal position, and now the maids are finally leaving. With her arms spread out to the sides, the girl finally lay down. The day had come to an end. This couldn't help but make her happy, because she was so tired. Her eyes closed on their own, sending the brunette into the kingdom of morphine. Suddenly, without having slept for a second, she woke up again. Damn house, not a day of peace. Some noise woke her up. Were the servants still working? And what kind of servant would wander around the estate and make noise at such a late hour? Taking the special amulet, she asked herself what kind of curse had come this time. It's still good that she gave the servants an amulet. At least nothing should happen today, and they can sleep peacefully. The girl began to count the sheep. 1, 2, 3, 4. Memories led her to those very doors. All the maids were alarmed and were on their feet from early morning. Simone, who had just woken up, came out and asked why it had been so noisy last night. Anna awkwardly stuttered and tried to pronounce the words, but it came out poorly. Let him speak already. In any case, only Lady Simone can handle this. The girl began to slowly tell that strange sounds had been heard that night. Some unknown dull sound. Because of it today, all the servants could not sleep until dawn. The head maid burst into the conversation. Yes, everyone heard it, but no one dared to check where it was coming from. The girl smiled. But what if it's an ordinary ghost? Okay, they're still good guys. In this mansion, if something strange happens, it's better to keep your head down and stay put. But did they hear anything else besides this dull sound? Yes, there was something else. The cook said he heard a voice at dawn. He woke up early in order to prepare the kitchen and the necessary ingredients for today. And then, trembling with fear, he said that when he was in the kitchen, he heard a woman's voice. Simone thought and began to remember everything that happened before going to bed. She would probably need to talk to the cook. Answering Anna's question about where she was going, the girl replied that she wanted to go for a walk. I also asked her to bring the manual from the room. It's important. Taking small steps across the estate grounds, she came out into the courtyard. Ever since that red tree in front of the gate disappeared, they have started tending the garden again. And now it looked like a completely different, more beautiful place. Here the girl stopped in order to thoroughly study the necessary literature over a cup of tea. Could it be that her eyes were deceiving her? The girl had already leafed through the entire manual, but still couldn't find the information she needed. Okay, maybe she should be more careful and start over. No matter how much she looked, there was nothing in the manual about mysterious sounds like footsteps or anything about a woman's voice in the middle of the night. Simone grabbed her head. Her body was only 17, but her eyesight was already terrible. And then she asked Anna if there was any secret instruction among the servants regarding such sounds. The girl thought with the teapot in her hands, but it seemed that no, all the servants were perplexed by what had happened. Even the head maid, who had been working longer than her, didn't seem to understand what had happened tonight. Getting up from the table, the girl declared that in that case, there was only one place left where she could find out something. And with a quick step, she moved away from the gazebo in order to talk with the owner of the estate himself. However, now the gentleman is receiving an important guest. After all, it was today that Mr. Wren and the members of the Adventurers Guild arrived at the mansion. Could it be that they will now have in their hands that very magic stone from the legend? Just think, he couldn't believe his eyes. He really exists. When Lady Simone suddenly arrived to visit the gentleman, he allowed the girl to enter. The smiling blonde was clearly glad to see her, and therefore noted how long it had been since they had seen each other. She admitted that she had heard that the stone had been stolen, and they had returned so quickly. Well, yes, he did promise them that he would return by the appointed time. He did a great job. The Archduke suddenly noticed that Simone knew Wren was here with him, but then why didn't she change the color of her hair and eyes? Having opened the chest and seen the jewel in person, the girl felt this aura. He is real. This fact was confirmed by the magician Orkin. He said that this is the saint's wish. Well, now that Lady Simone had also confirmed this, they could discuss the details. He was interested in who exactly was the person who was able to steal the stone so easily. It seemed like he was a fellow adventurer, not affiliated with any guild, but he could use the sword's aura. And his accomplices, in turn, were not so simple either. They seemed to excel in close combat and support, but such people never came to the village. In this world, among all the possible guilds, is there anyone who can control the aura of the sword and also travel with strong allies? If they decided to cause a rout, a real disaster would happen, and since he is a swordsman, his path will definitely cross with Luivi. Perhaps they are the same person. However, they would not raid the village even if they decided to steal. Judging by what he heard, each of them had their own reasons. So Wren assured them that they were not bad people, because now they were all part of his group. Anyhow, could it really be that the kidnapper was the novel's main character, Abel? Without hiding her emotions, Simone noted out loud how confusing it all was. She should have guessed it earlier. There have only been a handful of people in history who could match Luivi's swordsmanship. However, Abel's squad should now be near the border village, so why were they here? And the Saint's Wish, which in the original story everyone was supposed to find out about later, how did they find out about it? Could it really be her fault too? As soon as the story got going, unexpected events began to happen one after another. But no, since Abel and Louise suddenly crossed paths, shouldn't history have returned to its previous course? The Archduke suddenly asked her what the girl was thinking about, but she didn't know about anything. She just remembered she wanted to ask something. She would really like to hire this guy on her staff. Yes, because she will certainly need the help of qualified people. And Wren is competent, and as he himself could already notice, he knows about her real identity. Besides, relying on the Adventurers Guild in every matter is not particularly useful. It is impossible to force each of the groups to remain silent. And why does it all look like a child begging for a puppy? The Saint's wish is returned, and he is the reason. However, Wren cannot stay in this estate and live, eat here, like her. The guy told the gentleman not to worry, because he had his own house. He promised to go to work as usual, but asked to be provided with a room if necessary. Great. Then Wren gets a salary. She doesn't have to worry about money, but just manages him properly. The man was now interested in something completely different. When the girl received the stone, what did she intend to do next? The servants say they hear strange sounds at night, and they are uneasy about whether she will investigate this first. The girl shook her head. No, she should have mentioned this earlier. After all, first she's going to save young Master Jace. Well, strange sounds in the house are not as important as this matter. She's right. It was clear from the man's face that he was surprised, but there was still hope in him. As the lady left, he asked if there was anything else he could help with. It was hard to say. Let them prepare a healer just in case. If she needs help, she will send Ren at the right time. As for the rumors circulating among the servants, she would like the Archduke to look into them. Even she can hear those muffled sounds. However, this is not mentioned anywhere, which means that a new curse has appeared. He promised to sort this issue out himself, in which case the guys would take their leave. As he was leaving the man's office, Ren called out to the girl. He wondered how she wanted to save someone with the help of this stone. If the legend is true, then he only has healing powers. Dispelling curses is not in his power. Is he even familiar with dark magic? Well, yes. Witchcraft used by witches and necromancers to separate themselves from the deities. The Empire was so afraid of the dark magic they practiced that they decided to ban it. In protest, the necromancers began to commit various atrocities, which ultimately drove a wedge between them and the Empire. But why did the Empire consider dark magic so dangerous? Probably because it requires sacrifice. Exactly. So far, he has answered correctly. And at present, the Archduchess is actually practicing in these directions. So they came to those ill-fated doors of the estate, past which no one walks. The girl quickly moved forward, despite Ren asking her to wait. Is it really true that the Duchess does this? But she is an ordinary person, not a necromancer. With someone's help, it is indeed possible. But that someone, certainly not her, even with help, it makes no sense. After all, dark magic requires a living victim. And where could the Archduchess find them in her estate? The boy's face turned blue, but not that. Were servants really being sacrificed? No. Although it is possible that several missing servants were still sacrificed, they were not alive when it happened. There is one person in this mansion whom no one remembers, and there is no trace of him left in the world. This is the eldest son of the Illiston family, wiped off the face of the earth. It has been more than 7 years since young Master Jace became a living sacrifice. And standing in front of those ominous doors, Simone told everyone about it as if she intended to fix everything. So they both looked towards the terrible chambers of Archduchess Flori. I need to take a look right now. The blonde was surprised. Could it really be that sudden? Turning around, the girl said that they would just quickly look inside. That's all. No, the Archduchess is not locked in this room. They say she comes out and wanders around the estate whenever she wants. She herself once ran into her in the corridor. She communicates with his lordship quite often. Well, now there were no more questions, yes. Or he needs a little more time to prepare. Oh no, it was time to go. They grabbed the door handle, not knowing what to expect. The blonde glanced nervously at the lady behind him and asked again if he could open it. He jerked his right hand, holding the second chest with the stone. Not immediately, but the door gave way. Right in the crack, he discovered the terrible face of a woman with sunken cheekbones and narrow pupils. How did she manage to come so quickly? Had she been standing there all this time? The blonde man was so taken aback that he even apologized. He felt embarrassed to bother the lady. The guy was about to close the door behind him, thinking that it would be better not to touch it now. However, she did not allow this to happen, and putting her hand under the blow, she opened the doors even wider. And then, throwing the guy aside, she ran forward after the girl. The dehydrated lady looked even thinner than last time. It was impossible to look at her without fear. Stretching out her bony hands, she headed towards the frightened Simone. She only finally realized that she had run out after her at the moment when she was captured. The guy stood to the side with his mouth open, watching the fast action. He didn't even have time to say her name before the girl found herself in the mistress's chambers. Ren quickly rushed to the doors, but they slammed shut, and he couldn't open them, so he had to shout his friend's name. He asked if everything was okay with her, which attracted the attention of the servants. No one understood what had happened. And why is the man from the guild, who was next to the lady, now standing here alone? Where did she disappear to? Calling the guy an adventurer, they said that these were the Archduchess's chambers, and he could not make such a noise here. In that case, he himself decided that it was better to grab the chest with the stone and run away headlong. Even though running was forbidden in the mansion, he hurried to the Duke's chambers. The servant next to him certainly didn't like his insolence. What was the meaning of all this? Was it really possible to burst into his lordship's office like that? Although he came here on the orders of his master, no one said that he could behave so disrespectfully. After a long and fast run, the guy couldn't catch his breath and came to his senses after a couple of seconds. And then he loudly declared that the Archduchess had dragged Simone into her chambers, and he did not know what to do. The two of them rushed upstairs. Did they really go to her to break the curse, something like that? But the girl said that today they just needed to inspect the situation. Before lifting the curse again, they briefly outlined the general plan and opened the door slightly, and right behind it stood the woman. It seemed the Archduchess might have overheard their conversation, but they didn't have time to ask anything else before she rushed out so abruptly. She dragged Simone into her room and then locked the door. Was the man really aware of everything that was going on here? If they were both referring to Jace now, how could this be allowed in the estate? Rubbing his head, he agreed. Yes. Since Simone had already managed to tell about it, there was nothing to hide. It was too dark there, and the guy didn't have time to see anything over the lady's shoulder. It wasn't even clear whether there was anyone there. However, to be honest, even if there was someone there, it doesn't seem like a place like this would be suitable for a living person. It's as if Jace Carl Illiston himself is there. Although it seemed to the guy that he could only exist in the memories of the estate itself. But judging by the Archduke's reaction, he now exists only in his memory. But then why? He is his son. How can he not know about his condition? If he was so worried, then why didn't he ever visit him at any time? The servant, who had been standing nearby all this time, was again indignant at how the boy dared to speak like that in front of his master. He couldn't afford to just stand there and listen to all this until his lordship gestured for silence. Taking a step forward, the man nodded. Ren was right. After all, quite a lot of time had passed since he himself had seen this child. The servant standing aside didn't understand what they were talking about now. Could it really be that the master's son was Jace? And if you think about it, is there anything in this story that he doesn't know about? No, and anyway, he is unlikely to understand how everything will be resolved. He will tell and explain everything to him. The man in glasses stood nearby, confused by the situation, while his master grabbed his sword and decided to deal with the pressing issue right now. Taking the dagger blade out of its sheath, he wanted to open those doors. They need to focus on getting Simone out of this room. After all, at that very second, the girl was fighting for her life, and it was becoming harder and harder for her to breathe. Was she really going to die now? The chances are high, considering that the one who tried to strangle her was the killer of many, a lady grieving over her loss. The dry lips repeated the same thing over and over again, wishing her death. Meanwhile, Simone lay and prayed. She needed to hold on a little longer. If she had even one chance, then Jace could survive. The lady clenched her bony hands even tighter. How could she be so strong? Flori didn't care. There was only one victim left in the form of a necromancer, and Jace would live. Simone, already wet from resistance, understood that she could die like this, but she still found the strength to kick back. However, I was very surprised when nothing changed. For some unknown reason, the woman, who was of rather fragile build, did not even move, and the hands on her neck closed and grabbed the carotid artery even tighter. With horror in her eyes, she sincerely wished the girl death. Until suddenly, daylight burst into the room. It turned out to be Ren. The guy managed to knock down the door and get inside. He immediately asked if Simone was okay. How was she? But the Archduchess told him to shut up. It would be better if he didn't interfere, while the little girl greedily gulped air through her mouth, clinging to consciousness. Kneeling down, she cleared her throat and wiped the tears from her face. Clutching her throat, she admitted out loud that she thought she would definitely die. There was a bloody sword lying at the side of the room, but Flori was preoccupied with something completely different. Was it really Luivi and the Archduke who were trying to break in? If those two had been a little late, she would have been a dead man. However, now is not the time to think about this. She has a task, and while they distract the Archduchess, she must hurry and find Jace. The girl's eyes darted around the room until they found the main thing. This is Jace's bloody body tied to a pole. My God, what did they do to him? He literally had no face. While Simone stood there wondering how she had done such a thing, the monster took the knife into his hands. Flori was already approaching her, wanting to finish what she had started. However, Ren, with the chest in his hands, still managed to break this strong tree. He quickly began searching for Simone, while the Duke ran behind him. Both boys witnessed a fight between the Archduchess and the girl. And at that very moment, the exhausted girl gave in. The old woman still managed to wound her, and the first blood was shed. His lordship immediately ordered Kaylee to run to the village and bring a healer. Ren, despite this madwoman with a dagger in her hands, ran to his friend. Holding her on her feet, he informed her that the healer would be here soon and that they should leave first. However, the girl did not want to stop until she finished, and she turned to Her Grace the Duchess, saying that in this way she would not be able to lift the curse from Jace. Doesn't this crazy woman understand that there is no point in so many deaths and sacrifices? Because of the curse, the world was gradually forgetting about her son's existence, and as hope faded, she seemed willing to go to such lengths. She didn't know what kind of dark magician had persuaded her to do this, but let her think about what kind of dark magic could save a person. It's as senseless as saying that a necromancer can bring a person back to life. It's absurd. And if she ends up in a room full of corpses, she will eventually get sick too, even if that hasn't happened yet. But Jace is still a living person even now, and she can save him. Coming closer to the woman, Simone declared that she could now rest in her confidence and threw the amulet in her face. As soon as the card touched her face, something strange began to happen to Flori. Those same long dark burgundy threads suddenly burst out of her mouth, dozens of them flying in different directions. This was the effect of the talisman, which was able to drive out evil with the help of a stronger evil. This all lasted for half a minute, then only light smoke came out of the woman, as if she had undergone a cleansing procedure. Her energy is almost depleted, so we need to make sure she gets enough rest for a while. Well, now it's time to get down to the main business. Pointing to the tied-up, lifeless body, the girl declared that this was Jace, and his current state is also his lordship's fault, right? Unable to contain himself, the man began to tell a dark story that happened 7 years ago, the time when he began to be forgotten because of the curse, and Flori's heart became very weak. Just as she said, a man arrived at the estate. It was he who convinced his wife that he could lift the curse. Their last hope was dark magic, so he supported it. For 10 days, an unknown person taught the woman some kind of dark magic, after which he disappeared. No one suspected that those days would be the beginning of a nightmare. She began to drag living people and animals into her room. Even when the Duke begged her not to harm anyone, it was all useless. Hands stained with blood and tears flowing from empty eyes are all that is left of her. But no, in fact, he didn't really try to convince her. He just had to watch it. After all, they both felt deep pain towards their child, because he was erased from people's memories and doomed to a worse life. After that, the situation did not improve at all, and just when he thought that he could no longer remain on the sidelines, Simone appeared. According to the original story, Jace died because the man began looking for a necromancer after his wife and son were completely consumed by dark magic. However, now everything was different, and the girl still had hope of saving the boy. For 7 whole years, he was on the brink of life and death. However, he is still trying to live, and this means that his desire is strong enough. The girl ordered Ren to give her the magic stone. The saint's wish, which had been so difficult to obtain, was finally in her hands. Having prepared herself for the task, the girl approached their son's body, and using magic, as well as the scarlet stone in her hands, she placed the jewel on his chest, forcing him to live. From now on, he will live, so be it. A huge purple flash, and the girl's mana began to fill the magic stone with sacred energy. This should have been enough to free Jace from this room, bound by dark power. One more time, a little effort, all so that the world can remember him again. After some time, right before their eyes, the boy regained his human features. Ren, the Duke and his wife, watched from the sidelines, not daring to come closer. The curse has not yet been completely lifted. Everyone else still does not remember the young master. Before completing the ritual, he must be pulled out of this place, consumed by magic and sacrifices. To completely lift the curse, a certain price must be paid. But what does this all mean? The man was ready to give anything to save Jace and their family. And of course, he was ready to give his life for his son. Hearing this, the girl laughed. Well, he went too far. If the Duke is so willing to put his life on the line, then there will be no problems, and we can generally continue tomorrow. Simone ordered the Duchess and the boy to be laid apart from each other, and the magic stone to be placed in Jace's hand. For full recovery, this needs to be done for some more time. But the girl herself also had a wound, and blood was flowing. Why didn't she use force to heal it? Ren, with his own efforts, took the stone and ordered her to stand still. The Duke seemed to take a long time to decide and think about what to say. But then he said his treasured thank you. Meanwhile, the guy had already healed his girlfriend's hand. From now on, this necromancer is the benefactor of their family. And this only amused her. Now he really trusts her. Simone walked slowly through the palace, dragging a huge axe behind her across the marble floor. Arriving at the scene, she asked everyone to leave the premises immediately. Of course, the workers were scared, not understanding what Mrs. Simone was going to do with this weapon. However, she knew perfectly well what she was doing when she hit the wooden table with all her might, breaking it into pieces. The maids could only watch this in fear, standing aside, despite the fact that all these things cost a lot of money. After all, the Duke said, let Simone do what he wants. After all, this was exactly the price he expected for lifting the curse, and when the girl finishes, he orders the Duchess's chambers to be cleaned. The girl smashed the expensively furnished and luxuriously decorated room to smithereens, but the assistant still couldn't understand whether she was really going to destroy all of the Archduchess's things. And even this book in his hands, and all the other objects in this room, these are not ordinary things that can be simply taken and replaced. But Simone didn't understand what he was talking about. It was old junk, so what difference did it make? Perhaps there was some truth in it. Anyway, she's made such a mess, but she hasn't yet done everything she wanted. She needed to find and destroy the source of the curse, but she felt nothing. Since the Duchess fueled the curse with black magic, the girl should at least feel something after destroying the item. Holding the axe in her hands before swinging, she thought again, wait a minute. But the Archduke said that a dark magician lived in this mansion. The guy confirmed her guess, and it seemed like an idea had dawned on the brunette. So that's it! The girl rushed forward, not paying attention to anyone. So, with an axe in her hands, she asked the maid where the room in which the dark magician was staying was. All the maids were very afraid of this madwoman and could not really answer, until the chief servant came up and calmly ordered Simone to follow him. The slightly confused girl was surprised, but agreed. As it turned out, the servants did not know about his existence. Since black magic is illegal, it has always been used secretly. If it becomes known that a mage practicing black magic has visited the cursed estate, this will stir up not only the residents, but also the servants. He was allowed to live in the mansion and communicate only with the Archduchess for 10 days. The man showed the room allocated to the stranger and then walked away. He had already forgotten why the master had decided to give the magician this room, but he clearly remembered how nervous he was. Ren was surprised that Mrs. Simone had decided to destroy everything here too. No, first they will look for something, and if a friend finds something useful, then let him report it. There were so many layers of dust around that it was hard to breathe, but he agreed to help. The two of them studied the room for a long time. They went through all the drawers, looked at all the linens and hidden places, until suddenly, Simone discovered something hidden from public view. Grabbing a certain ball in her hands, the girl joyfully shouted what she had found, raising it up. Surely this is the very thing the dark magician left behind. In that case, they had no choice but to break this white ball. She swung it and threw it to the ground with all her might, and the glowing thing shattered into pieces. Her red eyes lit up with happiness. It seemed the curse was lifted. She ordered Ren to check on the condition of the Duchess and Jace, and if the Duke was nearby, to watch the butler's reaction with him. After all, if the curse really did disappear, it would be Kale who would be the first to remember everything. Coughing from the rising columns of dust, the guy understood the order and asked, what will the girl do in this case? Simone, happily holding the door handle, opened the door to the outside and announced that it was time to rest. Anna flew into Simone's room, saying that she had heard something. The girl, who was calmly sipping tea, was suddenly interrupted. Well, what else could she have heard there? It's even interesting. The friend replied that it was a heavy, dull sound of something hitting the floor. The headmaid ran up to her charge and agreed. She had heard it too. Last night someone really did make noise, as if they were stomping along the corridors. But the girl already thought that she would be able to rest, which was to be expected. This house will never give her peace. Do they really hear it that often, like every night? And that night, along with him, Anna even heard a female voice. She seemed to be saying that everything was over. The corridors were very quiet, so she could make out the words. The cook also said that he had also heard it. The ghost of a woman, muttering, as if searching for something, snorting and wandering at night. For some reason, this story seemed painfully familiar to her, as if from a world where she had previously lived. A scary, dark atmosphere and a creepy monster voice. No, that can't be. How could this sign appear here? With these heavy thoughts, Simone headed to the Duke's chambers. Throwing open the doors, she asked him sharply if he was busy. The case concerns strange sounds that the servants claim occur every night. And this noise is definitely not mentioned anywhere in the reference book, she checked. It looks like a new curse has appeared on the estate, or something unrelated to them is happening. His words struck the girl. How can one understand something that is not connected to this family? Then could it be something that came from outside? The girl remembered perfectly well her facial expression when she saw that ghost. Seeing Simone's frightened and serious face, the man asked what was wrong and who she suspected. But she was just lost in thought and couldn't say anything. Nothing came to mind. First, let her see for herself, and after she is sure, she will tell you everything. Taking advantage of the moment, the girl asked how the Archduchess and Prince Jace were doing. The boy, as she asked, tries not to let go of the stone, but there is little progress. Well, this is not a quick matter. We need to keep an eye on him further. She will come back later if there are any questions. Leaving the Duke's chambers, Simone exhaled as if she had gotten rid of a pile of stones on her shoulders, until the moment she noticed that someone was standing in front of her. It turned out to be Ren. But what is he doing here? She didn't invite him today. The guy laughed sweetly. How could he rest when she was working? It's incredible. Does she really have an employee who doesn't take a break even when asked to? He was probably just keeping an eye on her. The blonde man started talking about suspicious sounds at night. It seems that many of the servants have already witnessed this. It's a big problem, because it will interfere with work. Perhaps he should watch these sounds at night. Simone stopped and suddenly asked what he would do if he came face to face with the cause of the noise. Well, he'll just cut it with a sword. But why not do the same as with the scarlet tree? She didn't know because she hadn't encountered it herself yet. They say that lately the noise has been coming from the basement, so the best way to find out the reason is to see it with your own eyes. However, she did not hire him as a bodyguard. Of course, it is understandable. He wants to know about necromancers and oddities, curses of the imperial family, but he will only prevent her from meeting the ghost. Therefore, there will be no assignments for him on this mission. Let him just wait. The girl finally found Anna, who was carrying a heavy load in her small hands, and she asked her friend to prepare a spare room in the basement for her. She would stay there for the night tonight. And Simone didn't care at all that there might be monsters there, because she came here to solve these problems. Ren approached the girl again with another proposal. While the room was being prepared, they could meet with the cook. They say he has become silent and frightened lately, but she was clearly planning to go to him anyway. The guy asked permission to follow her. Let him do what he wants. A couple of seconds later, the two guys found themselves in the kitchen. The chef sat among dozens of pots. He seemed frightened by the sudden appearance of strangers in the kitchen. She would like to talk a little and hoped that he was not too busy. The man looked simply terrible, completely pale, as if someone was pursuing him. The girl wanted to ask about the noise he had witnessed. Had he heard anything else since then? The man's smile fell from his face. The ladle fell from his hands. Yes, he heard. Does this mean, since she came to him and asked him directly, that a ghost has now appeared in the mansion? The cook covered his ears in fear and screamed that he heard this every day. And that's not all. He even saw him, that very ghost. Where the face should have been, there were blue, swollen legs, and instead of legs, there were a bunch of eyes. Clutching his head, he began to tell that it happened a few days ago. It was around this time that the servants began to whisper about someone or something wandering around at night and making noise. They also started asking him if he knew about these rumors. The workers were already too scared to prepare food alone at dawn. One guy was shaking with fear, and although not seriously, he asked to be butchered. It was better than taking the morning shift. Of course, he already knew that anything could happen in this mansion, and this boy was still so young, but already a weakling. And then one day, going down the stairs, the cook, without a hat, yawning, heard a certain sound. Looking around, he did not see anyone at his workplace. He remembered that brat who had complained to him. and the man had come here at the crack of dawn to help. And he didn't even show up. We urgently need to set his mind straight. Of course, he could have prepared all the ingredients for the soup on his own. But he decided to go and bring this stubborn man by force, who clearly did not want to work. He ran towards the exit as quickly as possible, already thinking about the words he would say. No such luck. Today, something strange started to happen again. It was the same thing. The cook had already heard about it from the rest of the servants, but he thought it was just the house shaking like that. This sound was rapidly pursuing him with all its might. It seemed that he was able to catch up. Just one awkward movement, and he trips over his own shoe. And then, with a loud splat and sharp pain, he flies to the floor. Trembling with fear, the man felt the monster approaching. But I didn't dare to see it with my own eyes. The fear was too great, and he simply crawled slowly towards the exit, until the creepy creature said that it had caught him, and the cook's curiosity crept up. Turning around, he saw a pale, bloody face with a creepy smile, hanging upside down. His huge blue eyes were just level with the floor. To be honest, he didn't understand anything at all about what it was, and why it just passed by and then disappeared. Nothing had happened since then. He just worked in the kitchen in the mornings as usual, trying not to run into that creepy woman. It seems he shouldn't have told me this, because now the silhouette pops up in his head again. So, if they understood correctly, the ghost looked at the boss and simply said no. Well, yes, perhaps the man misheard because of fear, but it seems he remembered correctly. Ren stated that it looked like she was looking for someone specific to attack. But if everyone in the mansion has already heard this sound, but there are still no victims, then it means that the ghost is hunting only those who are looking. Right, now it's all clear. The inverted ghost of the bloody woman. That day she followed her. Simone had already regretted 100 times that she had looked at her then. The girl decided to explain to her partner that this ghost was not a curse that appeared in the mansion. It seems she knows something, but it's better to talk about it in the room Anna prepared. It's hardly worth talking about all this in the presence of the cook. He already feels uneasy. As Simone opened the doors of her new quarters, she thought they reminded her of something. Isn't this the same room that dark magician used? Apparently, there weren't any more free ones. And what does it even matter why the girl doesn't like it? She didn't understand who had chosen this room in the first place, and why they were arguing with her. Anna became nervous. Her friend probably didn't want to live in this place, but this was the most decent room in the basement, and there were no rats here. It looks like Anna chose the room, okay? It's well tidied, so everything is in order, and it's quite enough for one night. Simone had already listened to the chef's story, and thanks to him, she had a rough idea of what it was like. And today, she was going to meet him in person. The maid was very worried. It was so dangerous, and therefore she hoped that Mr. Wren would also stay here for the night. The smiling blonde was already hoping to spend the night together. But no. The girl reminded him that he already had other things to do. The maid did not stop asking her if she could cope alone. Maybe in that case, at least she would stay with her. The coward was going to fight the ghost. The girl apologized, saying she would probably just be in the way, and her friend thanked her for her concern, but assured her that she could handle it herself. Besides, if she needed help, Ren alone would be enough. Then she will be back for lunch, and if they need help, they can call her at any time. The doors slammed shut, and the boys were left alone in this basement room. Ren immediately asked again what it meant that the assistant, who was so competent, had other things to do. Yes, and it is true, because it seems that the ghost that the chief saw became attached to her when the girl was in the village. On that very day of buying books, she saw this monster on someone's shoulder. So from now on, Ren's task will be to go to the city and find out information about this man. Having listened to his mistress, the partner did just that. That same night, the guy wrapped himself in a robe and disappeared on business. Having eaten her fill, Simone plopped down on the bed out of boredom. They said that the ghost appears at dawn, so you can climb into a warm bed and take a little more nap. The girl woke up not in the real world. At first, when she opened her eyes, she herself did not understand where she was. It was so dark around, she tried to scream, but it didn't work. It seemed like her voice was gone. Black energy began to flow around her body, and now everything became clear to her. Everything became even clearer when Simone saw in front of her a huge snake with predatory red eyes. When she grabbed her by the throat and she couldn't respond, the girl realized it was sleep paralysis. But all this did not change the fact that she was suffocating right now. Suddenly, someone spoke to her, asking why she was so desperately trying to change her destiny. She didn't understand who it was, but the smile of this monster was frightening. He had a long snake-like neck and even longer black hair. Leaning close to her face, he whispered that he would come to her soon. At this point in the nightmare, the girl woke up and greedily began to swallow air. Sitting up in bed, she tried to comprehend what she had just seen, but the noise outside the room quickly distracted her. Great. Thanks to the nightmare, she at least woke up in time. Standing on the floor and feeling the piercing cold, she put on her slippers, and going straight to the door, she leaned against it and began to listen. She waited nervously for the next bursts of sound, but it was the sound of my head hitting the floor. I didn't want to go out at all. However, it is already approaching, checking all the rooms for the presence of a certain person. What's better, to hide and wait until the door opens, or just jump out and meet him face to face? What if this ghost was looking for her? Now, after such a dream, she felt even more anxious. Okay, whatever happens. With these thoughts, Simone opened the door and ran out into the corridor. Seeing the ghost with her own eyes, she was surprised. The black face broke into a smile and laughter, repeating the word found dozens of times. He certainly looks like something, but why is he looking for her? However, the blue eyes said with disappointment that no, it wasn't that again. Well, thank God. If she was pursuing her, although she was looking for someone else, then it means that the one she needs is not in this estate. She probably just sensed her dark aura when they met in the village. Simone squatted down and suggested that they look for the person she needed together. And then she admitted that, in fact, her employee was already looking for him. She can wait here until he returns, because there is no one she needs in this house. After hearing this, the ghost closed his eyes and then disappeared. The girl only managed to notice a light haze in the air. And then, exhausted, she fell to the ground with an exhalation. Her calm was interrupted by someone's voice. What is he doing here at such a time? It was the Archduke, in his nightgown, who asked her if she had finished the job. The man came to check on Flory and Jace, and the servant in their room told him that she had been fighting the creature alone in the basement. He helped her up, since there was no security nearby, and decided to check if everything was okay. Simone just laughed. Everyone seemed worried about her today. As she went upstairs, she asked him if he had seen the ghost itself. She just wanted to make sure she wasn't imagining things. And that's why she asked him if this ghost was familiar to her. It seems she blurted out too much. It would probably be strange if she said that the one who was hired to exorcise ghosts was the one who brought one into the estate. So now it's time to quickly run to your room. She's finished all her work in the basement for today, so she wants to go back and sleep peacefully. The man suddenly noticed that it seemed like Kaylee's memory was gradually returning. Flory has finally come to her senses, and Jace has survived the worst, which proves that the curse is completely broken. Simone stated that soon the other servants would remember everything too. It seemed that there was a rather good atmosphere between them now. So she decided to tell his lordship something. This is information about the very ghost he saw. It seems that he really got into the mansion because of her. After what was said, there was a minute of silence. She apologized, to be honest. She didn't want it to turn out like this. She got herself into trouble, but at least no one got hurt, so everything is okay. The Archduke raised his hand, and Simone only mentally hoped that he would not scold her or send her to the basement. She did not like it there. However, the man simply patted her on the shoulders sweetly, advising her to be careful, and then he turned around and left, still holding the same flashlight in his hands. Could this really be his entire reaction? It's just early, go to sleep. While the maids were working, like the whole mansion, the girl was lying sweetly in bed. She hadn't slept so sweetly for a long time. Since she saved the Archduchess and Jace, this ghost shouldn't bother her, so she can rest easy, at least until Ren returns. Because how can she look for that person if she doesn't even know what he looks like or what his name is? This will most likely take a week, but the partner, contrary to expectations, has already returned. Seeing the blonde man with his usual cloying smile in her chambers, she was upset. It seems the task was urgent, so he forked over a little money and sped things up. Well, yeah, he didn't even let her rest. He says it wasn't difficult to find a person. Fortunately, it turned out that on that day, only one man in colorful clothes was collecting information in the village. Baron Rottenburian, a descendant of a family of merchants who bought his noble title, has a son and 2 daughters, and is quite wealthy. Wait a second. Wasn't Chouse Oliver? I guess that wasn't his real name. He often goes abroad on trade matters, so even though he is a noble of the Luan Empire, he is not very well known there. According to documents, he lives in the capital, but no one in the area has heard of him, and there are rumors of debauchery. They say he doesn't pass by any skirt, be it a maid or the daughter of a business partner. Baron Rothon claims that his wife died early from illness, but rumor has it that she died of grief, and this is the reason he came to the village this time. Allegedly looking for a girl from an impoverished noble family, Simone carefully read the document provided. Why did he talk to her then? Now she feels uneasy. Throwing the paper on the table, the girl asked, "What next?" Hoping that this is not all the information he has obtained, there are also rumors about an illegitimate child, which is already interesting. This happened 3 years ago, about 2 after the death of his wife. They say that Roten always came to the village with some girl. In an expensive noble carriage drawn by horses, he offered her his hand as she exited. She was very thin, wore expensive jewelry and dresses, but did not look like an aristocrat. These were probably just gifts from the Baron. However, at some point, the girl's belly began to grow, and the informant thought that she would become the Baron's next wife. And after that, the man came to the village with another lady. The girl who was known to the informant was never seen again. It is impossible to say for sure whether he really wants to say that the man abandoned the pregnant woman, but the informant thinks so. Ren conducted a separate investigation based on the informant's account, but there had been no news of a child being born in the Burian family in recent years. His legitimate children have already grown up, his daughters have married, and his son is preparing to accept the inheritance. So what about that woman and the child? What awaits an illegitimate child and his mother, an unrecognized family, as a rule, is death. He thought so too, it's quite plausible. To be honest, this was not uncommon among the nobility. Simone thought for a long time, and then suddenly turned to the headmaid with an order. You will need to prepare a long, strong rope and place it in a visible place in the basement. What is the girl planning? Does she really want to kidnap the Baron? Oh, who do they even take her for? Let them not worry. She will use it only as a last resort to keep him. Well, if they don't care about this ghost, they can continue to sit there with their eyes wide open. The girl again distracted the Duke from his important affairs. Entering the room abruptly, she addressed his lordship with a request. It was as if he had already gotten used to Simone not observing etiquette. This concerns a ghost that knocks in the hallway at night. The girl laughed and said that she had a condition before she told. Let him please reimburse the cost of the information for which her employee overpaid. She instructed him to find out more about the ghost that had appeared this time, and he overpaid for the information 300 times. She might ask for such a favor. The servant asked whether the mistakes of his subordinates applied to them, but the Archduke agreed, of course. Simone is under the protection of their house, so he will pay. So what information did she get for that kind of money? The guys found out about Baron Rotenburian, but the informants inflated the price a bit, explaining that customer data is expensive. But why did she need information about this man? Well, of course, because the ghost that appeared in the mansion was originally haunting him. The girl handed the papers to the Duke and asked him to look at them. He quickly read everything and agreed, of course. So what does she need now? To invite him to the mansion. She wasn't going to invite him to a giggle and laugh, of course. She only wanted one thing, for him to meet his ghost face to face. Of course, she won't allow the Baron to be killed, but she can't guarantee that he will leave the estate safe and sound. The Illiston family may have to bear responsibility, but one problem in the mansion would disappear. The girl felt sorry that she was asking him to pay for what she herself had done. However, it's not her fault that she saw him then. The Duke said that Lord Rotenburian was a very wealthy man. Besides this, although he was engaged in trade with other continents, no one in the Empire cooperated with him. Ren suggested that he meant that now they could deal with the Burian family, and nothing would happen to them for it. The man confirmed his words. Yes, this is their chance. The Archduke understood perfectly well what she was talking about, and no matter what the girl did to the Baron, he was ready to take the consequences upon himself. Simone herself didn't fully believe that he was sure. As she knows, their family has already been branded as damned, and the Imperial House has turned its back on them. So what difference does it make, since their reputation can't be worse? She needn't even worry. He will invite Baron Burian to the estate. It was unclear how he would manage this without connections, The man was ready to come up with any number of reasons for inviting him. Even if their family is in decline, no baron would dare refuse the Archduke. However, the family had not received guests for 300 years, so it would take him some time to arrange a visit. The girl was ready to give 10 days. Reluctantly agreeing, the man noted that in the meantime, she too should prepare to exorcise the ghost. 10 days later, the headmaid struggled to wake Simone, pulling the blanket back. "How much longer can I sleep? What, 5 more minutes? She can skip breakfast, so why does she sit up until late?" Instead of grumbling, Anna kindly helped her friend up. The maids needed to clean up, so they sent her out for a walk. "Well, what's wrong with getting a good night's sleep on the last day of your vacation?" Opening the doors, the girl decided to have a snack in the garden. "However, I was very surprised to meet someone I didn't expect." Mrs. Flory stood right in the aisle, as if waiting for her to come out. The lady was silent, only looking piercingly at the lady. Simone, and all the other maids, were afraid of her ladyship. However, the woman apologized with a smile for scaring them, and she asked to give her at least a little time to talk. Even if the curse was lifted, she didn't want to talk to the man who was trying to kill her without preparation. However, the first thing the lady said while drinking tea was an apology. Anna was trembling all over as she poured the tea that the woman had prepared, especially for their conversation. She hoped that she would like the drink, and if not, then there was no need to force herself to drink it. Has she really become her old self again? It seems so. But what brought her to Simone? The lady came to thank her and ask if she needs anything to live comfortably in this place. After all, exactly 7 years ago, Flory lived here. Before she became Archduchess, it was her bedroom, and later her office and personal space. And since Jace was born, the room where he grew up, his place, has been very dear to her. So when she found out who lived in it, she was surprised. The lady suddenly asked how old the girl was. However, she was so deep in thought, trying to remember Simone's biography, that she seemed to have forgotten. She thought for a moment and then answered, "She is 17. The lady was just worried that she had to force the child to remove the curses, so she is very glad that this is not the case. Flory asked her not to be shy and asked if she needed pocket money, clothes, food, anythings, or if she wanted to go to school. The Archduke must not have thought about it, because he is not very attentive. Wow. Even though she was possessed by black magic, she nearly sacrificed many lives and even tried to kill her. Now everything is different." She calmly sipped her tea, trying to help. For some reason, warmth and tenderness emanate from her. Even if the lady didn't need anything now, she wouldn't hesitate to contact us in the future. After all, the lady believed that there was nothing more meaningless than empty gratitude. Does this really mean that she will be able to receive pocket money? If they give it to her, she needs to take it. In any case, she has gradually become accustomed to the role of a young lady and no longer feels satisfaction from removing curses, so a reward would not hurt. Their family is still out of favor with the imperial house, so Flory won't be able to give her much, but he promises to come up with something. By the way, Lord Burian was supposed to visit the estate today. She asked the Duke to invite him to calm the ghost, and she will also be attending the dinner with the Baron. Simone's own thoughts made her realize what day had arrived. The lady agreed. She had never done this before, so she didn't even know how to help her. But she will try, because the noble carriage will arrive soon. As he stepped out of the carriage, the man thought only of how dare this poor family distract him from important matters. Straightening his tie, he once again glanced irritably around the estate.